Hey everybody, welcome to another live episode of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Thanks for joining us on YouTube and Facebook. And all throughout this podcast, you can throw your questions in. You can just type them into the comments. We'll comb through them after we go through the normal podcast and answer them, or as much of them as we can. Feel free to ask whatever questions you wish, cycling related or even unrelated perhaps. And we can get to as much of those as we possibly can. And with that, we'll get right into the proper podcast. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, good. Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
And we are going to answer more of your cycling and triathlon-related questions. You can submit them at trainerroad.com/podcast. And we'll go through those questions and answer them. Of course, we have a number of things to cover before we get to those specific questions, though.
If we get to those questions.
If we get to them, because there's a lot to cover this week.
There is.
We've done a lot of things, and we've researched a lot of things and other stuff, too. But let's just start, actually, with yesterday evening. We went, and actually there's a really good event coming up this weekend. Sounds like it's going to be an annual thing, so if you miss it this year, it's one to put on the list for coming years for sure. But the Peter Sagan Dirt Fondo is going on in Truckee, California, which is about, it's about 40 minutes from our office here in Reno. Pretty nice. So it's a mix, though. So there's a road portion, which we're going to get to later because we also did a TT on the road portion of this course.
Yet another TT.
Yeah, yet another TT. And we'll get to that because there's some exciting stuff with that. For anybody that's tracking our 40K TT build up and prep and everything else, there's some interesting results here. But before we get to that, there's almost 40% road.
Yeah. So
and then the rest is dirt.
This is like, I want to make sure we will too. Just say everything in principle, because not every, probably like 100 people listening are doing Sagan Fondo and then everyone else isn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of road and then dirt, but they made the dirt sections where there's some like bumpy, like a little. It's technical, right? Not technical. Yeah. It's
there's a section called the majority of the course, I would say, is
which is 65 miles long, right?
Yep, 65. Yeah,
okay.
Awesome. It's about, the majority, I would say, the dirt is like gravel road, Jeep trail that's relatively smooth. The majority of it.
But maybe for you, but a lot of it was like they're little like it's been washed out from the winter, and there'll be these bumps.
Yep.
Yeah, jolts that force you out of your saddle.
Yeah, they kick me up, right?
Yeah.
This is not dirty Kansas. This is not just like,
It's not a gravel road.
No, it is not. You have some of that, but the majority of it is not. There's one section called the Boneyard, which a lot of people are fixating on, and it's basically a spot where I think that it must have been a riverbed many, many, many years ago, and it's just rocks that are, fist size to all the way to milk jug size.
Yeah.
And you basically, that's all there is on the trail. It's not like you're weaving between those. You're forced to go through them and over them. So it's kind of like a situation. The interesting part about this, and I see more gravel races going this way, and I kind of like this, or I just see mixed surface racing kind of going this way in the sense that there's definite compromises. It's not like there is a specific bike that's best because to optimize for that Boneyard, which is a 2-mile climb where you could lose significant amount of time and possibly puncture.
A couple little water crossings.
Yep. You have a few sections like that where it makes you think, man, a mountain bike would be really nice.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to say is when we pre-rode it yesterday, Chad and I were on cross bikes with I had 40s and you had a 45 and a 37, and Jonathan was on his mountain bike. And Jonathan, why were you on your mountain bike?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get in as many long days as I can in like a race scenario before Leadville on my Leadville setup. And I plan to constantly improve or evolve that setup as I get closer to it. So I'm not necessarily chasing a result at this thing. And I know everyone's saying it's a Fondo. Well, it's a competitive race.
No, this one, right on it says this is a race. There's one in September that's a fun ride, but it says this is a race with age group stuff.
Yeah, top 3 for each age group.
Yeah.
Yep.
5-year brackets, I think.
Yep. No, 10-year.
10-year?
Okay.
And solid racers are showing up. I know that we're going to have Jeff Kabush. He pre-rode with us. Katarina Nash.
Just a normal Wednesday night.
Exactly.
Right? Some of the
World
best
Cup
riders in the world.
winners,
Cool.
yeah.
Exactly.
22-time national champ in Canada.
I think 4 Olympics maybe 5 Olympics between the 3 of them. That's just crazy. Or between the two of them. Pretty insane. So, but they're showing up. I've heard that Levi Leipheimer's showing up. I saw that he did a really hard ride and took some KOMs, some famous ones yesterday.
I bet Stetna will come up.
He's moving. Stetna was with him, and he has a Bike Monkey event too. So, and they're the ones that promote this. So it could be like a pretty stacked field. But I'm just doing that I think that in my mind and this is where we get to an interesting point. If I was to optimize for this course and this race, I would pick a cross bike with large volume tires. I would have a wide range of gearing, and my bike skill would allow me to get away with that. But I think that depending on the rider you are, a different bike is best. Yeah. And I think that it's probably that way for a fair amount of courses, but especially for this one. And moving forward, I see even more races being like this because you feel like the mountain bike's actually better for you.
Yeah, last night made the decision for me. A cross bike is not for me on this course. And the reason is because although I could ride the whole thing and I wasn't in danger, going speed through even gravel roads that have all those bumps where I'm getting bucked around, I either have to spend so much energy like hovering up, or I'm like timid and I'm kind of on the brakes and I'm dodging things rather than on a mountain bike. You know, it's like a 2% grade or something. You're going 25. On a mountain bike, I can just blow through all that.
Yeah.
Right? And then on the climb, it's like a 40-minute climb probably. 30-minute, somewhere in there, 30 to 40-minute climb.
Yeah.
That's technical the whole time. And the amount of energy. Yeah, it's steep too, right? So the amount of energy that I have to use to dodge technical stuff, I think it'll be more enjoyable. At the end of the ride, my hands, because I was gripping the bar so tight on the cross bike, that part would be really hard for me to go. I'll be safer, and I think I'll go faster. And there's another point, I think, when you're thinking about which bike to choose for this race, although there's so much road, you got to think about how the race is going to play out because we know this road section really well. And what the speeds are in this, I think it's going to be a big group. And I don't think at the very beginning, especially there's no like major climb at the beginning, there'll be such a big peloton going through that I'm going to be barely pedaling. There'll be a couple climbs, but I think I'll be able to get over those fine, and they're really short climbs.
Yeah.
That I won't be, like, if I was solo, it would be a different story, right, on a mountain bike, and I'd be really unaerodynamic.
But you think that you can hide in the draft of the group and then also perhaps get away with having lower gearing like you have on a mountain bike and not needing to pedal really quick because you can just hopefully latch on and stick with that draft, I guess is the hope.
I mean, I think that they won't even be going that fast because we did the TT, and some of the downhills I'll just tuck, and if I'm behind somebody, like even if they start pedaling, as long as I'm in a draft, and I'll have a dropper post too, which is another thing to think about, I'll be able to get so low on the bike that I'll be even more aero, right?
Yeah, right.
My tires will probably have a little more rolling resistance, but I don't think it will be enough. And I'm bigger, right? So on those downhills, I bet you I'll be hitting my brakes, right? Rather than having people pull away from me.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how the road sections play out for you because I'll be on a cross bike. Because I've done the Boneyard in particular twice now. And I did it once on a hardtail mountain bike with high volume tires, 2.2s, I think.
Yeah.
And then now I've done it on a cross bike with what Nate described, a 45 front and a 37
relatively
rear, so
high volume.
Pretty high volume, yeah. And got the pressure a little low, so that was a little tricky. I was bottoming out, but I think I found the sweet spot, which, by the way, for me is about 30 pounds. And I'm going to be using 40s.
And I think these are like maybe 20 or 19 or 21 millimeter internal width rims for people wondering. Yeah.
No, you're going to use mine, 25.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm going to the NBs,
Attaboy. So you'll probably end up dropping pressure a bit then.
I'm going to try 30. I think 30 was about what we settled on because I went down to low 20s, and like I said, I was bottoming out. But
with the wider
in
internal
at 50
width
was abusive, to say the least.
Yeah, with wider internal width, in most cases, you're going to end up dropping pressure a bit
to
get the same.
He rode my bike.
We were in the same field.
Oh, he
at
did?
30 around.
Yep. Yeah, I tried it out.
Yeah.
Cool.
I did my homework.
Nice. So you're kind of with the cross bike. You're almost. It's not that you're optimizing for the road.
Well,
I feel like you can like. And sorry, while I flatter you for a bit, but you have a lot of stability, and we've talked about this before. But you ride a bike separated from your bicycle, and you have a lot of core strength, so you're able to manage that. The bike can move underneath you.
Everything I'm not.
So, but that's why I feel like
I think
the Boneyard wasn't that bad.
It's a good fit for me. I actually enjoyed it yesterday. Once I got the tire pressure right, I think I enjoyed it more than I did on my mountain bike. Just because it's, I'm not even sure why. I just know that the rest of the course that bike's going to benefit me, and if I can get through the harder stuff that would merit a mountain bike on a cross bike, then I think I'm going to enjoy that more. And Kurt pointed out that Kurt Gensheimer, the guy who
designed the course,
pointed out that there are two ways to go about this. If you're looking to push the pace and go for your fastest time, the cross bike's absolutely the way to go. If you want to enjoy yourself, the mountain bike's absolutely the way to go.
To be fair though, Kurt's skills,
Yeah.
are Jonathan.
Kurt's
he's
next level. Like
crazy
I always
connector.
say that Kurt's like he's twice the man that I could ever want to, I could ever desire to be.
Yeah.
He's like a mountain man and he's
Yeah.
a gnarly dude. So
And, actually, looking at you, Chad, watch you ride it. I think you would be faster on your Canyon hardtail mountain bike. It's like 19 pounds, right?
20.
So 20? Okay, so you're going to lose like 2 pounds. My mountain bike's 25. That's the only thing that like kind of gets me, question it. And you have a full lockout, and your bike is so rigid on locked out.
Locks out.
And I would be
Legit
getting
lockout.
yeah.
just you could even run Riddlers on that. I mean, you could run just
My biggest concern
thin
with going
tires.
on the mountain bike is single hand position because we did that first pre-ride on the mountain bike and it beat my hands up. And I know the togs that we can talk about that in a second, but being able to go on the hoods, on the drops, on the tops,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on the tops on the more abusive stuff, and it worked really well. Sure, you can't actuate the brakes from there, but if you're a skilled enough rider, you don't need to.
Yeah.
That brings up a great point and I've experienced this doing a long mountain bike race, being in one position for a long time it starts to hurt.
Yeah, it does.
So Jonathan found these goofy things,
Yeah.
really goofy.
I don't think they're goofy at all. I think they're great.
Everyone thinks they're goofy.
I didn't want
except for me.
I didn't
Ian?
want to run them for a long time, just because I was like, they look like not cool. That's
Like
what I
little
thought.
devil's
right?
horns almost.
Yeah, they they give your bike mini little horns that are about like an inch tall or so, but they're called togs, and it's the thumb over grip system, which is funny that they call it. Like it's kind of funny,
System.
right? Because it's just a simple little thing that clips around your bars, just to the inside of your grips. And all it does is, like, if you're a mountain biker and envision this with me right now, you have done this before. When you're tired or you're riding for a long time or you're relaxed or you're climbing up a hill, you take your thumbs and you put your thumbs over the grips because it allows like a different shoulder, a different position all the way through from your neck down.
You're not gripping. You're just resting on your hands.
Mm-hmm. And you're in that position, and you've probably also found yourself in that position thinking, wow, what if I hit a bump? Because I'm not really paying attention right now and my hand slipped off.
Or you've actually hit a bump and let your hand slip off.
Yeah. And so these little things just give you like easy leverage. Like you don't have to carry. The other thing I find that like, after like single track 6 last year, my hands were like, I couldn't even open them.
Yep.
Right. And being able to just ride with your hands totally relaxed, and I'd be able to move my fingers, everything else, because right there locked in the crease between your thumb and your forefinger, you've got like just a bit of leverage.
It basically
Really
simulates
helps.
a road brake hood. The
Yeah.
same place you rest on the brake hoods, it supports it in that exact same spot, and it's
Yeah. They're
I think
clever.
they're super clever.
They
So-
really help. And they have like new ones that are like flexible. So then because my worry too is like, I don't want a little prong sticking up from, they're not sharp, but I don't want anything, sticking up from my bars like that. But the new ones are actually rubbery and flexible there. It's a clever thing. And for long days I see guys using them, like the top guys, like, Keegan Swenson, Payson McKelvin, all those guys, they use them even on XCO races, the short hour and a half to 2 hour races, just because you're carrying so much tension through your body that it's nice to be able to have that different position.
I'm going to use them on climbs that are not the boneyard with the baby heads, but just gravel climbs, just being able to put there. I won't do anything like fat and fast. Fat? No.
Flat and fast.
That's it, guys. Thank you. Because if I do hit, I need that. I'll be gripping on so hard. If I hit a bump, I'll fly off and stuff. But just for the climbs, it'll be really nice to be able to relax a little bit.
Right.
Focus on putting out power.
Yeah, I came up in a day and age where we had actual bar ends on the end of them. So we had a few different positions to choose from, and for whatever reason that didn't pass muster.
It became uncool.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a pioneer. I was amongst the pioneers. Let's put it that way.
So this is going to be interesting. I'm excited to hear about excited to share how we do, because I'm riding a mountain bike, and my goal is just to put in a very steady power day. Like I want to be able to finish this race because it's 67 miles, and I want to be able to finish this race not feeling like, I don't know if I have any more left, but I want to be able to finish this race and feel like, man, this is like I've put in a consistent, solid effort, because that's the sort of thing at Leadville. I'm not, at Leadville, you don't set the world on fire. It's a consistent, long, steady effort. So that's what I'm going for. And Chad's going to have the cross bike, which opposes that, because on the road, Chad has a relative advantage, and then Nate will be on his mountain bike to benefit his, or to balance out the weaknesses, and it's going to be interesting to see how we all do. So,
but the point being, there's no one right bike, so you're going to have to decide, just prioritize.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Jonathan hasn't said this yet, and I don't know why he hasn't, but he got a new mountain bike, and he hasn't even mentioned it yet.
Yeah, I haven't even
So which
mentioned it
mountain
yet.
bike are you going to ride?
Yeah, the Yeti SB100. It's their new bike. Some people are branding like this new breed of cross-country bikes as down-country bikes because they're like cross-country bikes with downhill tendencies, so to speak. And it's definitely one of them. I feel like that whole thing's been around, long before. I mean, the ASR, the one I had before, was even like this. But 120 millimeters of front travel and 100 millimeters of rear travel. But it's got a 67.3 degree head tube angle, which for any geometry nerds, that's actually really slack for a cross-country bike. And a slack head tube angle, just imagine like those Harleys you see from way back in the day where it's like a chopper, everything's slacked out. That's a very slack head tube angle. That usually helps you carry momentum better. It helps you not get stopped up and stuff, and it makes the bike handle a little more aggressively when you're descending. So it's like a really good descender, but I've built this thing up to be 23.7 pounds with a lot of effort and cost into that. But it's a light, full suspension bike, relatively speaking, especially for what it can do downhill. It's not the ideal bike for this gravel race, right? But I still don't feel like I'm at a relative disadvantage because it pedals. It's so incredibly efficiently.
I think he'll beat both of us. No question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having fun on that ascents yesterday.
Yeah.
It was fun.
You guys are fast.
Yeah, it's a blast. So that's what I'll be riding on for this and all subsequent mountain bike races. So it's a dream bike. It's pretty cool. With that in mind, though, let's actually backtrack a bit. Nate, you last week we talked about your allergies and how it affected your performance. We'll get to your performance later because maybe it hasn't affected things. We'll see. But
maybe it has.
Let's I guess digging into things. You talked about. I mean, I think you take an inhaler, right?
Mm-hmm. Before working out.
Yeah, a prescribed inhaler.
Which is what, Ventolin or what's the...
Oh, albuterol or something?
Albuterol.
Yeah, albuterol, I think.
Yeah. And then we got kind of deep into the weeds at looking into, like, if you're treating something with asthma, like what's legal, what's not legal.
Yeah, because we got
a lot of weeds.
We got in a conversation because my allergies were so bad, and I take so much over-the-counter medicine and sprays, and I've gone through 2 rounds of shots, and I've done drops, and none of it helps. And I was complaining because Wiggins got his
triamcinolone.
That's it, shot
Yep.
for his allergies during maybe he did have allergies, but he got a TUE for it and stuff, and we were complaining saying I should get that, but they probably wouldn't give me a TUE.
Yeah.
So I started researching.
Can I hold you really quick here? I don't know if you noticed, but they said that Wiggins' stuff was delivered in a Jiffy bag, a very suspicious little, which is like a padded envelope. Chad got a padded envelope sent to him the other day.
I did.
And it said it was from like a pharma company, and it said it was time-sensitive materials.
All true, I guess. And to let the cat out of the bag, or the mint-flavored Tums out of the bag, they were just sodium bicarbonate or whatever that is.
Yeah, mint-flavored Tums.
Yeah.
That's clever.
Okay.
Huh. So anyways, I thought that I was catching some sort of a great scandal. I really didn't. But
yeah, I'm going to send it here
pretend.
too. That's how I'd go about it.
It was fun to pretend.
So let's go. First, I went to the doctor.
Yes.
I had 2 problems. One is the allergies, and I was like, what can I do with these? Mm-hmm. And 2, the saddle sore we talked about before. I gave it a week off. I did one ride on the TT bike, and it got angry, gentlemen.
Oh, no.
Like real angry, like really big.
You went to the doctor, didn't you? Did you not?
I went to the doctor, and I went to like a same-day doctor, and guy was about my age, and we did the saddle sore thing first because it was bigger than it's ever been.
That's usually something that like everybody stops at that. Like they don't want to go to the doctor for a saddle sore because of privacy, right?
Yep.
Like,
and this was in the worst spot it could be.
But it got so bad, you were like, yeah, we're going to, yeah.
So I've got a tip. Because, of course, the doctor wants to see it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So he gave me this, like, piece of, paper, like a big placemat for dinner. And if you put that over and kind of lift stuff up, and then he's like, I got to lean back. And my wife said, this is what it's like when we go to the gynecologist, right? Like, you get it. So anyways, I show him. What he did was he poked the thing 15, 20 times.
This is my least favorite story ever.
Over and over and over. He's just like, well, it could be this, and it could. He didn't know what a saddle sore was. He thought it was. The nurses were like, "Did you get a battle sore?" I was like, "No, it's a saddle sore." He's like, "Oh, you've been riding horses?" I'm like, "No." So he just kept poking it and poking it and poking it. Just coming up with ideas in his head.
Not needing to do that. Yeah.
I'm like looking at the ceiling. What's going on here?
Oh, man.
So with the saddle sore, what he did is, this is what he told me. He said, don't use Neosporin. He said, if you're going to use something, use Polysporin. And he said, he gave me like a prescription antibacterial stuff, which was super expensive because insurance didn't cover it. It was like $65. And he said, but you could use Polysporin too. I think sometimes, I don't know if this is true, but I've, like one time a doctor prescribed me something and I didn't look at it, but it was just, it was like prescription level Tylenol.
Yeah.
So I could have just taken twice, right?
Yeah.
But I had to, and this was at 2 a.m. So I had to go drive to a 24-hour pharmacy thinking that I needed something. And I look at it, I'm like, hey, this is just Tylenol. So I thought he might have just been giving me this prescription to make me feel better, when really he said, just don't ride on it, which I'm not riding on my TT position because my motorbike doesn't do it, and then use the Polysporin rather than the $65 cream.
Do you know what the difference is between Neosporin and Polysporin?
Yeah, there is. He told me there's one active ingredient that will. Are you quizzing me or
I
you
don't
know?
know. I don't know.
No, there's something that he said would agitate the saddle sore inside of Neosporin rather than Polysporin. I don't know what the difference is. Hopefully somebody on the live who's a doctor can type it in or knows.
Yep.
But I don't want to talk bad about all doctors. So sorry about the whole prescription thing to get you out of there. But
maybe go to a sports physician next time.
For a saddle sore?
Someone who actually knows what a saddle sore is, so he doesn't have to do so much poking
Well, it's
and prodding. Spare yourself.
Or a dermatologist, right?
Yeah,
It's hard to get it in like what I really want to do. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, dermatologists are complicated.
So I talked about an allergy shot, and actually looking up at this, what it really is, what Wiggins got is a Kenalog shot. And that blew my mind. That's like the brand name of it.
A lot of people refer to Kenalog shots commonly, like but nobody refers to it as triamcinolone usually.
Yeah, my mother-in-law gets it all the time.
Yeah, My father got it his whole life too. Rat allergies. Yeah, got it all the time.
She's never going to compete at the world level.
Yeah, true story. There we go.
Anyways, he said because you had the sore, you do not want that shot at the same time because of your immune system, which made me think too it was bad. Anyway, long story short, he gave me Singulair, which is totally legal on USADA stuff. The one thing is Singulair, one of the side effects is like affecting your thoughts and mood. And my wife and we think that it does. Here, I seem pretty mellow maybe. I don't know. But anyone else taking Singulair, it's crazy. After 1 week, me and my wife, I'm going to stop taking it now. Yeah. I'm going to try just doing it at maybe at races until I figure out another thing for my allergies because
it affects mood that much. Huh?
Oh yeah, we're ready to. She's ready to.
But just your mood when you're with your wife, not in general.
No, I mean.
Never mind.
I remember. I think that you were taking it beforehand, and I remember you were having the same thing. So and I've noticed it too.
I've taken it 4 times in my life, and each time I get kind of what it is I'm faster to trigger.
Yeah.
So
shorter fuse.
Shorter fuse and littler things get me more angry. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we tried to dig into this because we looked at all the different allergy medicines and we tried to we got really deep into the weeds and it's a weedy mess, a bit of it. So we actually referred to and this is some interesting stuff. You can go onto Global Dro, and that's DRO.com, and you can go through there and you can look up the name of and you won't like aspirin, you can search that and it might come up with something as common as that. I don't know, but a lot of the time it's coming up with if you say triamcinolone, something like that, that will pop up in there, and it will have guidelines that are provided to make sure that you're within compliance with the governing bodies that you race with.
Really specific guidelines.
So to go back on this, my whole fear was if I were to get a Kenalog shot, it's such a common thing that I was wondering how many age groupers get a Kenalog shot and then could be caught doping, which would
brand them for life.
Brand them for life, right? No matter what, even if you're in you're a local, I don't know, whatever your job is, and you get branded as a quote unquote doper and you didn't know it. Oh, that would. I mean, ruins. Doesn't ruin. Maybe it does ruin lives.
It's in the process of ruining lives right now. I mean, we've seen it in the past. We've seen it with. I don't even need to name names.
Yeah.
But it happens frequently, and it's happening right now.
And B samples, it doesn't I always. It's the B. I don't know if I've ever seen a B sample come back and contradict the founding of the A sample, but at the same time, let's say it does. It still doesn't matter. Because because they saw the first bit of news come out about that, you're branded.
But I think what can happen is regular Joes like us, and Jans, unintentional, right? Your doctor gives you something, that's because it's the best thing for your health.
You just trust your physician. You don't really think about whether or not it's going to render you
So that Global Dro site, you can type in the medication and it will tell you if it's legal in competition or out of competition. And when I put in the triamcinolone, thanks guys. Yeah. When I put that in there, it said that it's it's not prohibited out of competition, but it is prohibited in competition. And I know that this shot lasts for like, I think 6 weeks or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, what does that mean?
When does in competition begin?
Yes. Right? Like, can I take it? If I took it, so what I actually emailed them, and it's really cool on that site. You can email USADA, and they will respond to you. And I had a PhD respond to me.
Yep.
I had a different experience. I haven't heard back yet, so I'm not sure they're consistent.
When did you email?
4 days ago.
Yeah, give it a couple more days.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're about to get overwhelmed with questions.
Yeah, they're gonna get bombed.
So I emailed them, like if I took it, so let's say I had a shot today and I have a race in 3 weeks, is that in competition or not?
Right. Like how long does it take to drop off to the point where you have enough to be able to trigger that test, if you were tested?
What's the glow time?
Yeah, glow time, exactly.
What's the glow time, yeah.
So there are a bunch of, and then there's another differentiator there. And the other differentiator is if you're a national level athlete or a non-national level athlete.
And what does that mean?
And how you administer it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So,
intramuscular, intravenous.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the administration method totally changes this as well.
Oral.
I actually called up some folks. Number one, a gentleman that was involved. He's actually one of the managers of the TUE process at USADA. And then also, I spoke with that same PhD that you spoke with as well. So I spoke with them on the phone, and I asked him first on the national and non-national level athlete, because I was like, I don't know what I am. I've gotten a podium at a national championship before. Does that mean that I am? And he said that it's in many cases the process is subjective, and in the sense that what he really means with that is they look at your results, and then they try to build a profile to some certain extent. He said if you're competing in national championships and you're placing well, he says that you're probably going to be in that position to be a national level athlete.
Pool of riders.
Yep.
And that's something that they build themselves, right? Because when I emailed, they said, I don't see you in the national pool. Why are you asking this question?
Yep. And then in some cases, he said that if you race internationally, so let's say that you, for example, Dave Christensen, one of our filmmaker here, incredibly fast pro cyclist, he goes and races internationally. In that case, he might cease to become a national level athlete, and then what happens is he's kind of like handed off. They hand off the baton to an international organization, and then they would be the ones responsible for testing him in that situation, and he might not be considered a national level athlete thereafter. I don't know if that's just because of the demands of testing and how costly that can be. So they only they try to focus it down. I'm not sure why.
Did you find out if once you're part of this pool, you're forever part of that pool? Is there?
Yeah, I asked him that question, and he said that once again it's somewhat subjective. But he said the best thing, he said, if you're getting a knock at the door, you'll know you're a national level athlete, and we get that, right? That's pretty obvious. So I said, is it safe to just assume that you're a national level athlete then? If you're should everyone behave as if they are a national level athlete? And he said it's hard to say yes, because the amount of cost that could be incurred thereafter because of being a national level athlete could be very high, because in that case you're having to go to doctors, get TUEs, go through and make sure that you have everything in order. And he said that can be pretty costly for a lot of folks. Seek out alternative medications perhaps, that are much more costly, but they might not be, a banned substance.
If you plan to compete at the national level, it's definitely in your best interest to be extremely cautious.
Yep, and that's why he said the TUE application process is online and it's super easy to do. They try to make it as simple as possible because they understand the fact that a lot of people are going to have to just, play the better safe than sorry card in this type of a situation.
And on their website, it says that if you get the top 3 at a governing body event, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And we
which
thought
would be like
even
in this
a
case,
state or district.
Yes, exactly. Like a district championship or a national championship. In that situation, if you're a top 3 athlete, you can almost just be assured that you're in there.
But it says for 25 years on their website.
Yeah.
On their website, it does. So that might be a catch-all to say they can always come back and get you.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is there's different rules. So
yes.
When I emailed, they said for the corticoids are never banned for non-national level athletes.
Yep.
So even though this thing says in competition, we could do in the middle of any race, I could take Kenalog shots all day long.
Yep. And you're good.
And I'm good,
because you're a non-national level athlete.
Yeah.
And this is kind of confusing for a lot of folks because when you sign like your license to be part of USA Cycling or something like that, whatever the governing body is, I don't know in foreign circumstances, but in ours at least, when you sign on with that, as a license holder with USA Cycling, you agree to an anti-doping code and living by such. So I guess that what I got to, I kind of assumed that it was just like, well, I have to abide by the same rules that Chris Froome abides by.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that way across the board. So it's a little bit complicated, but the best way to go about this is to look those things up with due diligence, make sure that you're really checking those boxes. They do have people staffed to be able to answer those questions. Ask as many questions as you need to make sure that you're clear on that, because it's depending on the substance, depending on, like Chad said, the method of administration, and depending on your status as an athlete, you will have different rules applying to you.
So again, the website is globaldro.com.
Yep.
And it is such a cool website. I started looking up all this medication. Nasacort, which is triamcinolone. Triamcinolone. That is the same drug, but it's a spray in the nose.
Yeah.
That's legal.
Yep.
Right? If you get, I'll just say Kenalog shot.
To a
It's easier.
dose, I'm thinking. I mean, you can't just pump that stuff in there.
Well, you can do as much as, I mean,
We've seen that happen
so if you
before.
do a lot of,
We have.
no, I this is just the nasal spray.
Yeah.
And if you do a lot of it, you'll get nosebleeds. It's
Yeah.
not going to enhance your
No, okay,
performance.
yeah.
Like, it's not a systemic thing.
Sure.
So again, now in competition, I got the final word. In competition means 12 hours before competition, all the way through a competition until samples are collected after the race.
So that means that, and that's talking about the testing. So that's an in-competition test.
Well, yeah, so I can't.
That's an important thing to differentiate, right? Like, so in-competition tests that's the time frame that they consider an in-competition versus out of competition.
Also, I can't take the drug in competition.
Yes.
So if I were to start a race and I took a Kenalog shot, and I'm a national level athlete, 16 hours before, and my doctor prescribed it, I wasn't just getting it online, and
You're in the clear.
I'm in the clear. I think even if I tested positive, I don't know this for sure. This is what I'm assuming.
You probably have to have
The doctor with the
Yep.
timestamp and say, yes, I did this. This was the reason.
Yep.
You know.
Essentially, you'd have to have a TUE, I'm sure. So
Well, I don't know if you'd have to have a
Or
TU
in
for that because it
effect,
was not.
it's worth checking.
It's worth checking. That's the way to say it, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much. If you're going to be on the line like that, it's you go to that website. There's a little question box on the right side, and you check because it is right now we're confused, right?
Oh yeah, and the thing is, after talking to them, they said like basically this is an N=1 case by case type of a thing that every person has to resolve.
That's the
So-
biggest takeaway.
So basically,
Yeah.
we've given you nothing useful.
No. Here you go. If you go to the globaldro.com website
Yeah.
and you find the medication you're taking, it's not prohibited in either.
So just a bit of due diligence.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry at
Exactly
all
right.
then, right? If it says on their website it's not prohibited in or out of competition,
Yes.
You're in the clear.
you're in the clear, right?
And the main takeaway that I wanted to get across is the fact that don't assume that you have to abide by the same rules that Chris Froome does, or anybody else that's a top level cyclist. It's an individual case thing.
Yeah.
And also it's worth saying there is no forgiveness thereafter. If you are caught, you are caught. You have to do this beforehand. It's not like you can say the TUE was in process or I was working on it. You cannot do that. It does not work.
So what about, I think you asked a question about supplements.
I did, yeah, because another thing, in the Supercross world right now. So motorcycle racing, another rider got popped for a substance that was in what I believe they're claiming. I'm not sure, but I believe they're claiming it was just in the supplement, and it wasn't listed, but he got popped for it. And as a result, and I think that's the case. I'm not entirely sure, but as a result, he's caught out, and I think a lot of people take different supplements. I know they do. Cyclists do. They're searching for recovery aids or whatever else it might be.
But you got to know supplements are a minefield.
Oh yeah. And the reason is it's not necessarily like the ingredient list isn't comprehensive. Like it may have trace amounts of something else because it comes from the same factory.
Yeah, the level of manufacturing, the fact that they're not held to FDA standards or any standards for that matter.
Yeah. So I asked them, I said, do you have like a seal of approval basically? Like do you have a process that a supplement manufacturer could go to you and then make sure that they follow this? And they said no. And it's just not feasible. They said it would be way too hard for us to control that. Like we could lay out the steps, but they said basically it seems like it would be almost impossible for these supplement manufacturers to actually follow that to a T as things are currently organized.
This is big. So in the see with the recovery drink things we talked about last time. Some people recommended some of the bodybuilding ones, and there's always this rush on like bodybuilder forums where people will make like something with like test booster in it, and they say it's all legal, but they actually put something else in there to make it more effective.
And if they label it a proprietary blend, they don't have to spell out what that is.
I believe they don't have to spell out anything. They do whatever they want.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
And what happens is all these people find out, whoa, this really is effective. It's on the market and it's really hot seller for many months, and then it gets pulled from shelves because they find out there's something in it.
Yeah.
But if you are a cyclist who gets tested during that time, that's really scary.
Yeah.
So there's certain I actually do trust some brands. I trust Gatorade's not going to put anything in there. Scratch, Osmo. Right? I don't think that they're...
When you can look at the label and there are literally 6 ingredients on it.
That's good.
Feel pretty good about that. And nothing's mysterious whatsoever.
Can you imagine if Gatorade put something in there?
Oh, yeah.
And
they couldn't do
every
it,
athlete got
they couldn't do
ones.
it. Like
right,
it's just not
it would,
possible for them to continue. Like they would never do that.
But some of these some of these ones, the person on the bottle is obviously taking steroids, right? The look of it. So I would
jacked.
What I'm going to do is stick to those kind of more that, or just eat regular food.
Yeah, whole food based anything really.
That's the way to do it.
So segue to that.
Yes.
What are the things? Because we just talked about. I really don't want to. It would be the worst thing in the world for me to get caught doping.
Yeah.
But what could be some things that we could take that would be performance enhancing, but legal?
Yeah, and like you just said really quick, and just before you jump into this, Chad, is when we're talking about performance enhancing, you can get performance enhancement from eating, like you said, a clean diet that's well balanced.
Yep.
And you'd be amazed at the performance enhancement you can get out of that versus
TrainerRoad.
Exactly. There's so many different things. So when we're saying performance enhancement, any cyclist that wants to get faster should constantly be looking for ways to enhance their performance. That's the point of it.
Training and diet.
Yep.
Let's just say that. But if you're looking for some, supplementary ergogenic aids,
yeah,
we've talked about cherry juice plenty. We're not going to dive into that. Maybe we'll do a little homework on that and talk about that at a later date. But we just looked a little more closely at beet juice and caffeine.
Yeah.
And in order, let's start with beet juice, which is basically nitrate. So if you hear nitrate, you ingest it, you put it in your mouth, or bacteria in your mouth to break it down into nitrite. Then it gets into the bloodstream. Once it's makes it through the gut and into the blood itself, it's NO, or nitric oxide.
Gotcha.
So either way, let's just call it nitrate. Not super encouraging in terms of that. There's most of the studies point to little or no effect.
Gotcha.
But I was reading one blog, Nate Dunn, a data-driven cyclist, pointed out, and it's a super good point, is that when they say there are no significantly or statistically significant improvements, but we're talking marginal gains.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the times, just because it's not significant doesn't mean that it's not worth chasing.
Yeah, we're chasing like fractions of a percent.
Exactly. Exactly. So it might actually be beneficial to some riders, but you got to just keep in mind that unless you're on that fine line, probably not going to do a heck of a lot. It's not going to make you into a pro cyclist, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Something that I heard.
It's not EPO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Something I've heard with beet juice, or I should say just beet. It doesn't have to be the juice, right? It can just be beets too.
It can be, beetroot. So whether it's the juice or the concentrate, either way, we're looking for a certain level of nitrate.
I've heard that like regular supplementation diminishes the positive effect you could have.
Not so much with nitrate, at least not based on the studies I looked at.
Interesting.
So what it does is it doesn't improve VO2 max. It lowers the oxygen cost of submaximal exercise. So below submax, so below threshold, let's say, you get a little more work for the same amount of oxygen. For more oxygen, you get a little more power.
Dude, this sounds like I should drink this at Leadville the whole time.
Right?
Well, if you're chasing a very small marginal gain and you like the taste of beets, I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
And then there are some improvement.
I like the taste of beets mixed with like apples and mixed with citrus and mixed
so why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then there's some improvement in VO2 kinetics. So, and that's just whenever you see that term, just understand that all it means is when you go from a certain level of intensity and you ramp it up, your breathing ramps up really quickly, but then it stabilizes. How quickly it stabilizes is a measure of your VO2 kinetics. So elite athletes stabilize on the order of like 15 seconds, whereas less conditioned athletes or people with metabolic disorder or cardiorespiratory disorder could take them 2, 3, 4 minutes to stabilize. So it's a sign of fitness.
So how much are you actually looking at, like taking in? I guess that
there were a couple ways to go about it, but basically it boiled down to about 6 to 8 millimoles.
Okay.
And when you look at I think the molar weight or the molar mass of nitrate is right about 60 grams.
Okay.
So let's say 60 milligrams times 6, about 360 times 8, 480. So we're looking at somewhere in the 400 to 500 milligram range,
Okay.
which is about 10 ounces of beet juice.
Okay.
Or if you go concentrate, you're looking at about 2.5 ounces.
Gotcha.
And spinach and arugula are also really good sources of it, and you can get juices of those as well. But you're looking for something in the 400 to even 600 range. If you're an elite athlete and you're looking for gains, they're harder to come by. And you have to up the dosage. And even then, it's not conclusive that it actually benefits performance. So it's like anything else, a bit of experimentation. So this is in the, I think, like if you're going to do the micro or the single dose, I think it's like I wrote it down, maybe 90 minutes out.
Okay.
I'll try to find that and confirm it in a bit. Alternatively, or in addition, you can do it over the 6 days prior to competition and take that same dosage per day leading up to it. And then even chase it with another dose day of.
Gotcha.
But again, the gains are so slight, it makes me beg the question, is it really worth all this effort and all this expense and intake? And
Yeah, because it is.
concern.
Beets aren't cheap, and then you end up going
And the
through
concentrate and the beet juice itself is
Yeah.
not cheap either.
A pro tip. So I have like a very informal beet juice recipe that I have. I usually throw in, I think it's like 3 beets, and I have a juicer that I use with this. You can save the pulp, and you can actually make a smoothie with it if you want, sure, whatever. But just as an FYI, if you make like pulped beet juice, it's pretty bad. So it does. It's like it really
Like a
tastes
beet
bad.
shake, sort of.
Yeah, and it's basically just because they taste so earthy, the outside of them and everything else in the root. But
A lot
that,
of fiber.
and then I throw in an apple, and then I throw in a lemon, and then when you throw that stuff together, it's absolutely delicious. And a pro tip with that is mix in sparkling water, just a little bit into there, and then it
Livens it up a bit.
extremely refreshing.
I did come
it's a good
across
drink.
Pre-competition 2 to 3 hours out. It peaks about 2 to 3 hours into or after the consumption of it. So you can time that based on, if you got a 4-hour race, maybe you take it immediately prior. If you got a 1-hour race, you take it 2 hours prior, 3 hours prior, whatever.
So a while ago, I bought a juicer, and it is juicing beets is so messy.
It's a lot
and
of work.
Gets so much work. We have 2 juice places here. Actually, Kiva Juice in the U.S., which is a chain, they'll do cold pressed beet juice.
Yeah.
You just walk in there and say, "Give me some beet juice,"
Yeah.
and they'll fill up. I think it's 12 ounces, so right around there.
For what, $4 or $5?
Yeah, exactly.
It's genuinely worth the cost. Like,
Right. Yeah. Then the work and the price of a good juicer.
yes, it's like a lot. Of,
Yeah, it's like the whole espresso argument. I mean, I can't afford I can't even think of the brand right now, but they're Marzocchi or
La Marzocco.
La Marzocco.
Yeah.
These things are like $4 or $5,000.
And the amount of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right, every day, and you got to
yes.
clean it and keep it up, and
Yeah.
it goes everywhere. And you got to go buy all the groceries, and then
Then you hire somebody to make your espresso every morning in your house.
what happens too? If I buy a bunch of stuff to juice and you miss like a day or two,
Yeah.
the vegetables go bad,
Yeah, exactly.
and then
That's
it's the
another
worst
thing.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are we ready to jump
So let's
to caffeine?
talk about caffeine briefly
Yeah.
too. I mean, I don't think you need us to tell you that caffeine has ergogenic effects and that it's legal up to really high dosages. And
It was to a certain level, but right now it's on their watch list,
Oh.
which means there is no limit.
there you go.
Yeah.
All
As
more
far as
reason.
I know, you should probably check the site, right?
Once again, you should check it.
Do your homework.
globaljoe.com.
But Nate said it was fine.
But so
doesn't
as far
fly.
as the benefits, largely we're looking at reductions in perceived exertion. So you just you can ride out the pain a little bit better. That's the big get. It also has a sparing effect on muscle glycogen. So and that means it increases your dependency on exogenous carbohydrate. So it means you gotta eat.
Yep.
And it enhances glycogen replenishment post-workout when combined with carbohydrate intake. So these are obvious, easy gets. Why not? Especially if you favor coffee and you're already a caffeine
Yep.
imbiber.
And if you're not a coffee person, there are plenty of like things like
a lot of things
Science and
contain
Sport
caffeine.
has little tablets that are cola flavored with caffeine, or
Which brings us to
Goo, Cliff
dosage.
Bar.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in this case, plenty of studies on this matter. 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is about where we find the optimal return. And for a rider my size, I'm at 185-ish pounds, puts me about 84 kilos. We're looking at 250 all the way up to 500 milligrams.
Wow.
And to put that in perspective, a cup of coffee typically is around 100 milligrams. That depends on how you grind it, what the roasting is, et cetera. There are things that can influence that. Espresso right around 75 milligrams. So easy way to do this in order to peak that and not have to gulp down a ton of coffee and have to whiz 5 minutes into your race is, caffeine pills, or I think there are chews, there's gum.
There's pre-race. It has taurine in it too.
Yep.
That's by EFS.
Yep.
I mean, and let me point out one thing really quickly while we're on the dosage: 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram.
Yeah.
Exceeding that doesn't have any measurable effect. They've done it all the way up to 9 milligrams. I think they even exceeded that at some point, which is a crazy high amount of caffeine for a decent sized rider. And there was no measurable increased performance benefit. Yeah.
You might be a little more shaky.
And one more thing, let's get the details out of the way. Plasma levels peak. So blood plasma levels, the amount of caffeine in your bloodstream, peak at about 60 to 100 minutes prior to intake. So again, if you want to time that to your event, there's your time frame.
There's two things I wanted to discuss. One is coffee are not created equal.
No,
because that's like what Chad just said as a rule of thumb. But if a Starbucks blonde roast has 20-ounce venti, has 475 milligrams of caffeine.
Good Lord. So there you go.
Right? So that's like right there at it. But something that people don't know is the light roasts have more caffeine than the dark roasts. Yeah. You think the dark ones are like this beefier, meatier.
Yeah, the less roasted it is, the less diluted, so to speak.
Yeah. And then Kona coffees are even less caffeine. I'm pretty sure, if I'm wrong, someone please correct me, but they like a Hawaiian coffee has even less caffeine, very low.
Interesting.
And I believe too with, I know triathletes do this a lot, is they will reduce their caffeine intake. And I'm actually doing that too right now, is because if you are, I would probably take 600 milligrams a day just recently. And then you don't get as great as an effect if you take it all the time.
In some cases, there's a genetic component to this that denotes or indicates who responds how to caffeine intake. And even habitualized users can still see a big uptick in performance due to all the things we described here, even if they're regular coffee drinkers.
You just take more?
Nope, not necessarily. It kind of depends on, it comes down to, like I said, a genetic influence that I can't remember all the details on right now, but it's not the same across the board.
Super interesting.
Does caffeine and beet juice interact at all?
Yeah, so what they found is there's not really an additive effect. So if you're doing the beet juice, the caffeine is not going to further the performance improvement, and it can actually negate some of it.
Interesting.
There at least is one study that supports it can come at the detriment of your beetroot.
Marginal gains,
juice
discounting
intake.
other marginal gains.
So
yeah, for real.
Before our TT on Tuesday night,
Yeah.
I filled this cup up, which is 20 ounces, with cherry juice and beet juice.
Cherry juice and wow.
Together.
Maybe that's your secret.
It was my secret.
It.
Yep.
Can we just go right in? That was a good
Somebody
one.
call you
With
saw
that
it.
smooth segue.
Yeah. So we had a TT this week again, and for those that don't know, we're focusing on time trials right now. The three of us, and actually the more than that, a handful of us at the company here. And we're trying to figure out every single detail that you can take care of to become a faster time trialist. So we're documenting this whole thing. We'll have a great piece that's going to be released on this, and you'll be able to watch that on YouTube and everything else coming up. But we're all working on this. We've only done really one time trial, and Nate was out of town.
Nate was absent, yeah.
Yep. So it was Chad and I. We got to face up, heads up against each other, and it was only a 3-second difference. It was a short time trial.
Short
like,
TT.
I guess 17
miles,
something.
17-ish minutes.
Yep. And hilly. So it's not what we are going to face at all on
hilly, but subtly so. Less hilly than what we're about to describe.
Yes. What we did this week was a Merckx TT. Do you want to explain a bit of what a Merckx TT is and how it's different than normal?
Merckx, you're just looking to level the playing field. So you take out all of the aero gains that most riders bring to the table. They limit the wheel width or the wheel depth, even the number of spokes in the front wheel. No discs are allowed, no aero gear. Although certain exceptions were made. We could use a road aero helmet, but not a TT aero helmet. Certainly no bar extensions or anything of that nature. No shoe covers.
We could use our skin suits.
Yeah. So basically, they're trying to tone it down to a point where, regardless of the equipment you have, you're on a pretty level playing field with everybody else.
And they said Rich, who is the race director, which is great because he puts on so many races.
Yeah.
I don't think he makes money from it at all. It just it's nice for him to do.
Yeah.
It's basically if you can line up on a crit with it, you're fine.
Yeah.
And the only thing he said is no shoe covers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not. And then 40 millimeters for us was the limit. You had to be below
Depth
40
of the
millimeters.
On the
wheels.
wheel
Yep.
depth. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like the intent is to level the playing field, but these days with aero road bikes and everything else, it's not necessarily level across the board.
And our skin suits alone
yeah.
put us at an advantage over a lot
yes.
of riders.
Yes, they do. So
They're the no pins aero coach.
yes, exactly. So all three of us were in that skin suit. All three of us had aero helmets. I had the POC Ventral, their new one. Chad, I think, did you have the Specialized Evade?
Mm-hmm.
And
Is it
then
Evade?
I think
Is
so.
that what that
is?
The Evade, and then you had the
Giro Vanquish.
Giro Vanquish, and you were running the visor on
Yep.
there. So, and then all of us had the skin suit. We just had our normal road shoes that we had, no covers. You were pretty, as far as optimized gets.
I was optimized.
You were as optimized as you can get, right?
Well,
You
that's kind of how we roll. I mean, that's
yeah.
I mean, I did not for this race, but for every race,
Yeah.
in general, for me, the way I race, aero bike, right? And we've
Right.
talked about this many episodes ago, but for the vast majority of everyone, an aero bike, if you're a racer, is going to be faster than a lighter bike.
and we'll see evidence of that.
Yeah, because my bike is not an aero bike at all. In fact, I think it was. I
Neither
guess
is mine.
Yeah, yours either. I think that so mine's like an older tarmac before they started making the tarmac aero, right? And you guys did have trip socks on.
Yeah, but
which-
I think those worked against me as much as they worked for me. When they were pulled up, they were probably doing their job, but the fact is they slouched over the course of about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, they need some silicone on the inside.
They do
of
have
those.
some.
Really?
I found
They
out
need
that my
more.
legs are so skinny that they
Aero.
Aero.
More aero. Yes, yeah.
they I'm sure this did not help. This has probably negated my bike speed aeroness is that they roll down to my ankle. So I had like, when you're a kid and you had tube socks and you
Yeah.
roll them down. So you
Yeah.
have it was like that the
I
whole
actually
race.
spent one of my descents pulling each of them back up.
Really?
I promise I didn't benefit my time.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
I'm gonna glue them
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, it's. I feel
With
like if you.
Glue.
Okay. All right.
That 3M spray glue
Going
that
to
we
new
use
lengths here.
for numbers.
That's
I'll use
not
that.
a bad idea. I'm just not going to use them. So
Yeah.
I'm over it.
And then Nate, you took your bottles and cages off.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
It was like because it was like a 50-minute race and it was cold.
Yeah.
Well, I don't need a bottle.
Yeah. So these is something I want to cover really quick. I think this is why time trialists should do Merckx TTs. Because in one respect, like for me, it helped me really suss out the fact that I really benefit from the aero position of my TT bike and everything else. I'm weird. I think that I ended up somewhere. I know I was in the upper group of racers, and then there was kind of a gap behind me.
Mm-hmm.
But they're really like, man, it's not. You get so much benefit from that TT bike. So learning to get into a situation where you don't have that TT bike and everything else, it kind of reminds you of the fundamentals of a triathlon or a time trial, forgive me, where you can really focus in on what you need to do in terms of execution. So I feel like it's something that every time trialist should do every once in a while, do a Merckx TT.
Speaking of that, this is what I was laughing about before. Looking at Jonathan's power, remember last time how we said he went out too hard for this TT? On this TT, his first minute, 397 watts.
Sometimes you go
It
hard.
does start on a little climb.
It
so
does.
It's kind of hard to rein it in.
Yeah, and I was just trying to get up to speed. I didn't.
For a minute.
Yeah, and it takes a while. You're on a climb. But I wasn't necessarily jamming very hard or anything else like that. Once again, perception is so low in the beginning of something like that it's easy to go too deep too early.
That's the whole thing, right? Perception is so low that you go deep and you pay for it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just it. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to set the world on fire, and then I blew up or anything.
And
like
have we
that.
disclosed how long this course was and roughly what time we were looking at?
Yeah, we should cover that. It's about 19 miles, and I
Yeah.
think that we climbed about 1,200 feet.
Yeah.
It's not a flat course.
It's not flat.
So it's got climbs in it. One climb is about 3 minutes long, and it's I think an average gradient of about 9%.
Yeah, it's a legitimate climb.
Yep.
So we knew getting into this that we were going to be out there for anywhere from 45 to 55 minutes.
Yes, and it's one though where it's once again it's an out and back. So we're getting at the end. It's anything you've climbed, you've also descended.
It's a huge negative split.
Yep. Yeah, so you climb up, going out, turn around, then you climb down, and then you end up descending down.
Roughly 30 out, 20 back. So big negative split.
Yep. And the interesting thing about it though is that you end up it's after every climb you're rewarded with a descent on this one. It's very rare that you climb, stay flat until the next climb. It's like you climb, then you descend. You climb, you descend. It's just every time you descend, maybe a little less going out.
Yeah.
So it's once again, this is a really tricky one for pacing. This is a sub-hour effort, right? Not far under it, but it's a sub-hour effort. So
It's very much in line with District TT. 40K flat, we're looking at similar times, give or
Yeah.
take a few minutes.
the interesting thing, though, is what you actually do during that is pretty darn different, because during a 40K TT, you're going to be looking at pacing very consistently.
It's very different.
And with this one, if you pace this one consistently, you might not actually put up a better time, because at these climbs,
I guarantee you won't.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
There's no way.
you have to put out more on these climbs, and we checked with Best Bike Split and everything else, and Best Bike Split suggested the same thing, that even to my surprise, going surprisingly hard up the climbs. So it's not paced at all like a flat 40K TT, but the time ends up kind of similar.
So how we lined up,
That does affect
It's-
things.
This came about in the moment, but it worked out exceptionally well.
Yeah, I agree.
it was 30-second gaps.
Mm-hmm.
First was Jonathan.
Yes.
Second was Chad.
Yep.
Third was Pete Morris, who's
He's
been on
our
the podcast.
Product manager, racer for Cliff Bar.
Yep.
He's a cannonball of a human.
He's a hammer. And if
Yep.
any time trial suits him, it's a Merckx style time trial.
Yes.
Yeah, flat would have been flat.
Flat-
Merckx
flat
is,
would be even
is
better.
Pete's like
Yeah.
that. If there's a pro, that he should do that.
Yeah.
And then I was last.
Fourth.
Yes.
So in this 4 riders. And then Dave went way before us, so he didn't really factor into
Yeah.
our lineup.
Dave
Yep.
Christensen, who was a
Our
videographer
filmmaker.
here.
Very,
Just
he,
mentioned.
Pro
usually,
racer.
he usually wins the time trials.
Yes, he's a very, very fit cyclist. So Dave went way ahead of us. How should we tackle this? Do you guys want to get into just how we place and then get into it?
I'm just ready for the results. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
course
So
you are.
Pete was the fastest. 47.
Wait.
Okay.
Let's go from fine. I was going to talk about you guys.
Yeah, let's talk
The
about
last time you guys were 3 seconds.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this time, let's run through. We'll get
Okay.
to it. Pete was 47:48. That was his time.
So
47
that was the
minutes.
fast time of the day.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's a really fast time on this course. I think that he averaged somewhere around 24 miles an hour, roughly with that. And remember, it's a very climbing course. And it was slight winds and all that stuff too. Anyways, Dave got second, 48:06. Nate got third.
Fourth.
Or forgive me,
Well,
yes,
they got
fourth
fourth.
overall, but third in
The rider
amongst our
slotted in
group.
2 seconds ahead
Yep.
of him.
Yeah, exactly. So Nate got fourth, 48:11.
Yes.
Which is pretty darn
What does that
close.
mean, guys?
That means that you accomplished your mission of beating Chad.
And you.
And me. Yes, that's
I
true.
just
Yeah,
leapfrogged
you
both of you in
He
one.
almost beat everybody.
No, but the good thing, so I've always been like a mid-pack kind of rider.
Yeah.
Being so close to Dave actually gives me more confidence
Oh, yeah.
in my riding, because I was 5 seconds behind.
And you were low on confidence coming into this because
Yeah.
of your
Dave-
training.
I haven't been.
Dave serves as the bar. It's a really high bar, too. So
Yeah.
when you can get close to Dave, you know you're going good.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what I mean, though? Like, it's, it just gives me confidence, like, how much more can I go now that I get that close to Dave?
Well, seriously, I
5
mean, you
seconds.
go out and you beat 20 no-names. You don't know who they are. You don't know how good they are. It doesn't mean as much as it does when you meet somebody who's very reputable and consistent and very strong.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. I was so I got sixth. There was a rider that slotted in between Nate and I. I got sixth, and I was 48:47. And then Chad, you ended up just behind me, 49:17.
Yeah, not my best day.
Pretty close splits between us again. Chad and I are kind of close.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're totally different riders in terms of our shapes and our strengths and everything else. So,
So let's get to the power numbers, because that's what I find of particular interest here.
I beat. Wait,
Me
let's
too.
talk about this a little more. I beat Jonathan by 36 seconds,
okay.
and I beat Chad by a minute
and a half.
6 seconds.
Oh.
If I had
Right?
if this is like
Oh,
a
yeah, it's
radio
a minute and a
show,
half off
I would
me.
hit that like cheer button right now
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
So it was pretty nice.
You did it. Does this mean I can stop being the carrot?
Yeah, no, you're not the carrot anymore.
Thank God.
Well, the 40K TT still.
Dave's
I
the
mean,
carrot.
it's not like I'm gonna based on, we'll talk about it more, but based on these results, it's not like, oh, Nate's gonna win the 40K.
No, there's nothing
Right.
about this, and that's why we need to discuss the rest of the details.
Yeah.
Power numbers especially.
So Pete did. So all of us had. We'll just go into it. Pete did 330 watts normalized, 297 average, and he weighs around 200 pounds right now.
205.
Yep, 205. Dave probably weighs somewhere around 140 pounds, somewhere around there.
So we got the big guy and we got the little guy.
Yep, and he did 311 for his normalized and 298 for his average, which is crazy high.
Yeah, we think that Dave's got either the slowest tires on earth and the worst drivetrain, because he's what is he, 5'9"?
Yeah, he's small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he cuts a small hole. He's very aero.
Or
he
we
looks
need
very
to
aero.
validate his power meter, because
Yeah.
It's just the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah, so he definitely zeroed it, but we're going to check the slope, make sure, or actually calibrate it, and make sure everything's up to snuff.
There was a flat section where he put out 10 more watts than me, but I took out 20 seconds out of him.
And you cut a much bigger hole than him.
Much bigger.
You do. You have an aero bike, but I was looking at you. I mean, your position looks pretty good for being on a road bike in the drops.
Oh, yeah. Relative to Dave, I think that Dave would still be slippery, more slippery. He's just so tiny.
He is smaller. He's got to have smaller CDA.
A 6'6" rider to a 5'9" rider.
Yeah.
Like, it would be really hard for the 6'6" person, especially Dave can get low, right?
Yeah, Dave's very low.
I'm not trying to argue that.
Yeah.
Just to point out that you have some aerodynamics working.
You certainly do.
In your benefit.
Yeah.
Triathlete.
And then Nate, you did 306 watts and then 291 normalized. And you're weighing
306 normalized, 291 average.
Yeah, forgive me. I got it backwards there. And you're weighing about how much?
I was like 188.
188.
So
okay.
I'm getting a little heavier.
And then I'm 147 pounds on race day, and I was 275, 263. I couldn't get my power meter to 0. Last time I had it 0 was in my toasty office at around 70 degrees or so, and then it was cold out there.
How much of an impact do you think that would make?
I don't know. In the past, I've gone from very cold days, like where it's been calibrated inside, warm, and then I've ridden. We're talking like 30 degrees, and I've seen a difference of about 10 watts that's perceived.
It has a sensor in there, so it's supposed to keep track of temperature fluctuations like that, but it's always best case to do it. So
understand.
Grain of salt with that power number 2.
The power data seems low for the perceived effort that I had, but sometimes
Me too. Every ride.
No. I'm saying
on this course though, it's so.
No, and don't say that. Don't say that on every ride, because when I'm getting, I wouldn't say such a thing. So what I'm getting at is relative to other rides where I've actually pushed hard and what it feels like. I feel like I'm pretty well calibrated in that respect. Those numbers seem low for what I actually ended up feeling like.
This one wrecked you. I've never seen you so wasted at the end of an event.
I was completely
destroyed.
So
a little Carson City. That was the only other one that's been there.
Okay.
Yeah. And no, but to that, not joking, as I actually was surprised that I didn't put out more power 2 up there. We were at like 6,000 feet.
Let's get to that and let's talk about my power numbers first.
Yeah, 308 normalized for you, 299 average.
Yeah, so skip back for a second here. Nate did 306, I did 308, and he went over a minute faster than me.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk about some reasons why we think that is.
Yeah, and I really think that, and the interesting thing with this, though, just to cover this, the largest variance in between normalized, because this course is going to have a much higher variance than a normal time trial because of the climbs, right? But the largest variance, Pete had a 1.11, and it's called a variability index. That's a metric you can use to track that, and it's basically just normalized power divided by your average power.
So he had a big variation.
Big variation. Compared to the rest of us, we were all around 1 point. Chad, you were the most consistent once again. You're a great pacer. 1.03. I was
no data.
Yeah, that's true.
Zero data.
And you didn't even look at
Starting up.
But maybe this course wasn't the best to do that.
He's a machine.
To pace evenly.
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
We will absolutely talk about that.
He's still a machine. That's incredible. And then 1.05 for Nate, and then 1.04 for me. So, and Dave was 1.04 too. So Pete was kind of an outlier in that respect. But looking at all of this, the big thing with this course, and Nate and I might disagree on this still, but compared to a flat time trial, definitely this one is one that would benefit a person with like a better power to weight ratio because of the climbs, right?
I think so.
But when you're looking at it in terms of like a normal like hilly course or anything else like this, because this one rewards you with like such regular descents or frequent descents, and the descents kind of go like you do your climb and drop back down, then it's flat for a while. This is one where if you're a bigger or more aero guy, you really will
You can carry a lot of speed down the descents.
Yeah.
It's not as big of a disadvantage. And one thing is on the downhills, you don't have to brake.
Not
where
at all.
on other like
No
mountainous
braking.
things, if you're big, like, so, it's physics, right? You have to carry the weight up and you should be rewarded on the way down. And if we didn't have wind resistance to overcome and it wasn't exponential, there would be, you'd go just as fast downhill and it would all be made up.
Yeah.
But, on other mountainous things where you have to hit the brakes into turns, you're losing all that every time.
Yeah.
So the bigger people, all we're doing is overcoming wind resistance on the way down, as long as you don't touch the brakes.
No brakes on this course. There really aren't any sections on it that merit braking.
The turnaround that you hit, if you charge into that, you can brake. But even then, that's actually on an uphill, so you even don't really have to brake that much.
I'm not sure I braked. I think I just let off the gas and sailed through.
Yeah. So it's really a no brakes type of a course. So bigger guys can definitely be benefited in this case. The interesting thing is, trying to figure that out, and this is a lot of conjecture, I guess, kind of like you're trying to draw from different metrics, and there are plenty of variables we can't control. Yeah. But some interesting stuff. We looked at the descents, right? And that's an interesting point to me, is to look at that and see how long it lasted. We're all at different weights, different aerodynamics, that sort of a thing.
I think this was the most interesting takeaway we determined from this.
Yeah. So coast time, basically. And I used TrainerRoad and upcoming features that we're going to have where you can analyze your rides. It's going to be awesome. So I looked at this and I found exactly where we coasted. I only coasted 4 times on that course. And if you add up all that time, it goes to 1 minute 34 seconds of coast time. Chad, you coasted 5 times and 1 minute and 47 seconds. So not much more, really.
I adjusted my socks once too, so
there we go.
One of those is kind of garbage, but yeah, I get where you're going.
Nate, 6 times for 1 minute and 54 seconds. Dave, 7 times for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Pete, 8 times for 5 minutes.
The guy
and 11
who put in
seconds.
the fastest time coasted for 5 minutes over the course of that. That's amazing.
It makes sense because he's the
Amazing.
heaviest that he would coast the most.
It makes
that's
good sense,
mind-blowing.
but that is such a big difference.
That's a lot, right?
That's
If you were
2.5 times as long as I coasted.
Yeah.
If you were to tell somebody that you did a time trial and it was 47 minutes long and you did nothing for 5 minutes of that, that's pretty crazy.
It's really impressive.
Well, and the reason why is when we were coming out of pedaling, like how quickly, and this is where I could have done a better job.
And
Yeah.
me too.
We took the 4 biggest descents and averaged the miles per hour for it. I would start pedaling on average at 40 miles per hour.
Okay.
I could totally have tucked better and
Sailed.
sailed for a little bit longer, probably even went faster and saved energy.
Yeah,
and then put it on into another hill later.
I know
Yes.
better than this. I see the best riders do it, and it just didn't resonate that day.
Jonathan, the first day or the first descent, you pedaled the whole way down, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And you averaged 36 miles per hour for when you came out. So you did hold it longer, which is good.
Yeah. The interesting thing with this, too, I looked at max cadence, so it wasn't like any of us was spinning excessively. We all were 113 to 116 for our max cadence on the day.
Yeah, didn't even crack 120.
So it wasn't like I was like, spinning like crazy. It was just I wasn't to a speed where I could actually, coast. So
Chad also pedaled down the first descent. And then your average was 39, so you're pretty close to me. I'd argue both of us could have tucked a lot better.
For sure.
And then Pete, he coasted 37.5, so just about 3 miles per hour less than me.
And how much longer that difference between 40 miles per hour and coasting down to 37.5 can carry you is significant.
Especially if you're
This is what we're
super
finding.
different tucked.
yes.
That's the key thing.
Pete rides a top tube. That's not something I'm willing to do.
I
Certainly
do
not
as
for a
well.
local race.
And I think Dave does as well. So the 3 of us were doing top tubes, and then Pete grabs the stem in the center, basically, so his elbows are tucked in. I do the same. I don't do that if it's if there's turns or anything else. If there's turns, I'll be down there and it's not too sketchy.
But see,
I'll have my hands in the drops.
I remain seated, and I put basically my shoulders on the bars and my hands are tucked in. So I get very narrow and low. I won't get onto the top tube.
Yeah.
And Pete's top speed down the wall was 54. Mine was 52. So we're talking a very slight difference for a whole lot less control.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, depending on your body shape, depending on the bike you're riding and its geometry, a top tube tuck may not be faster than just tucking down normally, and that's been proven in wind tunnels. They say that for some people it's better,
risk of it
some
all.
people it isn't.
I stayed in the drops, and I hit my brakes twice on the descents here. Only one problem in the whole race. But what happens, and if someone can type in a fix for this, is I get going so fast, and I thought this visor on this helmet would do it, but also on the I had Oakley radars, they do it too. The wind kicks up, and my eyes get so watery that I can't see the road.
Did you try changing your head angle?
Well, I have to look up.
Well, I mean,
Look up more.
Yeah.
If you're
Look
letting
up
wind
more.
get in between the gap between your helmets and the top rim of your glasses.
I don't know. It just when it happens really quickly, and it's like
So that's
you
but
can't
that's
see it.
panicky, yeah.
That's the typical fix. I mean, other than finding glasses that may not do it, but the typical fix is if you have that, you have to change the way the air is flowing over. So whether that's changing your head position fore and aft, whether that's changing the up and down angle, I mean, head down, eyes up, or whatever else you need to do to be able to stop that. That's what I would recommend.
So I hit 51.5, and I swear when I hit the brakes, I was accelerating. So I just think what that tells us is Chad and I are similar weights. You were probably you didn't hit the brakes, is that I'm probably more aero than you in that position.
I think you're more aero in general. The numbers say that.
Oh yeah, they
so
totally do.
We did some new Strava segments, and Pete and I on the way out in one section at less watts, I put like 20 seconds in on them on the flat. But then on the way
That's not
back,
surprising because Pete's a broad rider,
Yes.
big rider.
but on the way back at the same wattage we did, he put 10 seconds into me. And what I think it is I've been complaining about this, is I am a weak human, and my triceps hurt, and my back hurt, my upper back.
So you fail to
fidgety.
hold that position.
I failed to hold the position. At the beginning, I was like so low and bent over, and then on the way back, I kept getting tired, and my elbows would get higher and higher.
Same here.
And it just it's a huge difference, right? Like that's a 30-second kind of swing.
Well, you said, because you were behind me for quite some time, and you said I was pretty high when I had my hands in the drops as opposed to when I had my hands on the hoods. I think I've lost touch with what it means to be low on a road bike, and I would just ride a little taller than usual. And
when I saw Chad, I actually thought, whoa, his back must be hurting because it doesn't look like he's in the drops at all. I thought you were just riding on top.
I was riding tall and hunching. It just felt better. So I was kind of cheating myself out of obviously a little bit of speed.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is I looked at our biggest descent on the course where you get over 50 miles an hour. And you, Nate, even though you tapped your brakes and you only got to 51 miles an hour
and a half,
whereas then the majority of us, like I got to 55, Pete got around there, you got, like you said, 52, 53.
Almost 55.
Okay, almost 55. So all of us were around the same speed. Even though you were like 4 miles an hour slower in terms of peak speed, or 3.5 miles an hour slower, you still out-coasted us in terms of duration for a very long time. And you started pedaling at a higher speed than the rest of us. So you could have even coasted even longer. Mm-hmm. So that definitely does, to me, number one, weight helps when you're going downhill. But then number two, that also speaks to aerodynamic efficiency, right? In the sense that you're able to carry it, that coast out a lot longer. And when you look at Pete, he out-coasted all of us by a country mile. And he started pedaling at 39 miles an hour. I started pedaling at 38 miles an hour. You started pedaling at 39.
We're looking at the long descents too. We know there were other stretches on that TT where Pete was coasting that we were working, and it worked in his benefit.
Well,
he also started,
He is 205.
He started coasting at 18 miles an hour. Dave started coasting at 32. You started coasting at 36. And then Nate and we started coasting at 21. It's really interesting to see that Pete, a big guy like that, he knows and trusts his ability to build momentum so regularly that he just drops down.
Well,
early,
see, that's another thing. He's exploiting his
energy.
strength there. He knows he can work his speed back up in a heartbeat. Whereas I think we're a little reticent. We don't want to shave off speed that we're going to have to reacquire. So we stay on top of it. At least that was my reasoning over the entire course of this one.
And in my mind, which this could very well be wrong, but I feel like I need to get myself to a certain speed so then I can start tucking, because I know I don't cannonball my way down and build momentum quite as quickly as Pete. So, but it's really interesting to just see the benefits that you can get when you really start. Like Dave, for example, he started pedaling 1,000 feet before. So after they were tucking, he started pedaling 1,000 feet before Pete did. So like he spent all that time pedaling, right?
1,000?
1,000
A kilometer?
feet. Yes.
But I mean,
no, 1,000 feet.
But
yeah.
still,
but
300,
it's crazy.
that's a lot.
He does.
Right?
I mean, the opposite though. If you think about it, how much less power Dave has to do to go up the same hill that they went down.
Of course,
a 140 rider versus 205. That it's going to benefit Dave in that situation.
Well, no, in one respect. Like, sure, that's separate. Like, don't even talk about the climbs. Just talking about the descent. Look at how much more time he's spending pedaling. Look at how much more time he's spending, wasting energy compared to Pete that's able to carry it. But that said, Dave's also lighter. So he would have petered out a little earlier. He would have reached that speed where he needs to get out of his tuck and start pedaling. But really, in the end, what this is proving to me is just the fact that weight can definitely be an advantage. And I know that we always talk about power to weight. And a lot of people beat themselves up for having a higher weight or not being able to affect that. But there are some plus sides to being able to carry more weight, especially if you utilize it intelligently like Pete does.
Yeah, on a course that you might not think would work that way.
It's only like this thing too, because if you're in a peloton and Dave was in a draft, he'd be fine, right?
Totally.
Like
He's good.
There'd be no, he was not overcoming wind resistance, and he would be able to coast just as far as probably everyone else would.
Yep.
The other thing I want to say about this is, Chad, you climb the hills like as fast or faster than me. I took all my time out of everybody, and Jonathan, you killed me on the hills. I think even Pete beat me on the hills.
Yeah.
All my time was on the flats that I took out like 30 seconds per flat section on you guys.
Yeah, you got to work on the hills.
No, I was it was a strategy. It was a different pace.
It was intentional.
Yeah, I was trying to pace less sporadic. Like even though it's crazy though is that my normalized was still higher than my average than yours. Yours was I think maybe that's because of the downhills.
Yeah.
but I was
so
trying to hammer it on the flats.
I do want to go back to this though, because we have roughly an hour-long effort, and we have normalized power, and from that we can we can talk FTP and see. So if I looked at this from a coaching perspective, I mean, what's your FTP right now?
So it's 293. And to clarify, last week I did 295 for about 40 minutes.
Okay, so let's just say 295. And, your numbers might be slightly questionable. Nate's, we don't think so. Nate, your threshold is 340-ish?
330.
330, so it's come down. Okay, so both you guys operated at what? Maybe 90% of your threshold, whereas my threshold, and we put it at 315, but now we're thinking it's more like 310 because we made a small error. I basically operated at threshold for the entire run. So
very close.
If I were coaching you guys, I wouldn't consider this a failure by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say we got to figure out why you guys can't maintain a higher percentage of what should be your sustainable power.
I had a 600 TSS week, huge ride the weekend
So you're
before.
carrying in a lot of fatigue.
Yeah.
So you think on a fresher day you could have ridden closer to 330 for this?
I don't know for sure, but
minutes.
I know 600 TSS and then one day off doesn't probably
I feel like
make it
you've been
awesome
doing
ride.
600 TSS weeks for a while though.
Yeah.
Okay, just something to think about.
And I thought the same thing after the race. I was like, yikes. This is really bad for the time. If I hadn't done that prior, that effort, it was really up Geiger, before Geiger, then up Geiger, and being able to carry that speed up through, or that wattage all the way through.
It wasn't fresh as a daisy. I don't.
Yeah, if I hadn't done it beforehand, I feel like I would have been doing the same thing that you're doing. Like, you have to look into the data and what it says.
Well, coach's hat off, and just Chad back at the table here. Yeah. I'm going to crush you guys because I feel like every effort I've demonstrated so far has shown that I can take my threshold power and extend it to whatever duration I need it to be. I can ride a little above it when it's a shorter duration
on a TT
so
bike
everything
or a road bike
looks
too.
Good so far for me.
It's the TT bike part that scares me.
Well, he can do it on both.
I know and we're both of us are lower.
Yeah, exactly.
His is closer. His data is.
So I still think there's plenty of drama here. And Nate spanked me. I mean, this don't visualize that. Nate beat me by a good margin.
Yeah.
Jonathan beat me again. Well, I guess I beat him last time, but you beat me by a narrow margin.
Narrow margin.
So there's still quite a lot of.
Oh yeah, it's tight.
Quite a lot of up in the air here.
We have another TT next week.
I know we do. It's
it's
a hill
not a
climb
very
TT.
telling one.
So and kind of
More
like
for power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you and I weigh the same, so we're very close to the same.
And kind of like this one, though, like there are things you can take from it, but it's not as direct, straight across comparison, right? Like these TTs that we're doing leading up to it, it's not a direct tell of what will likely happen.
No, that's what's keeping it interesting, really.
That's cool.
I feel like Chad's got to win, I've got to win, and on the hill climb, it's going to be a 7-8 mile 5% climb.
Jonathan will dominate.
Jonathan should win on that.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
If I can lose 9
you'll
pounds
put a couple minutes on us.
between today and then, and also though we're going to come
power
up,
in the
I
process.
think you'll have to hit up Global Dro to
Yeah.
whatever you're going to do to make that happen.
Well, the other thing to think about is we have Sagan Fondo on Saturday, and the race is on Tuesday.
We should all be pretty evenly fatigued.
Yes.
I don't think
Well,
any of us are going
I'm doing a big ride Sunday because I want to. We talked about these are
Still a
training
training
races.
week, yeah.
Not
and
important.
40K
Yep.
TT is coming up, so I want to make sure that I hit my training stress goals. I'm going to try to have another 600 TSS week, but that will also, whoever can recover from Sagan Fondo the best is also going to have an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll get into the hill climb time trial next week. With that, let's actually jump in and see if we can get some of these questions knocked out. Okay. Hopefully that was all educational for all of you. Going into this one, I'm doing a Grand Fondo in Santa Fe, which is at 7,200 feet. I live and train at sea level, and I'm planning to arrive in Santa Fe 7 days prior to the race. What training adjustments do I need to make to the final workouts leading up to the event since I will not be acclimated yet? It's not my A race, so I will be in week 3 of the rolling road race specialty plan.
Yeah, first off, that's a little bit concerning that you're going week 3 into a race. Week 3 should be funneling you into a recovery week. So the couple of workouts prior, I would definitely scale down. And because you're at altitude, the drop in power you're going to see for the same level of exertion is a bummer as well. I think I talked about this last week. I can't remember if I talked about it to you guys or on the podcast, so I'm going to reiterate. Cool. Tim Karras and Team Sky, they go to Tenerife to do a camp, which is at roughly the same altitude that you're at.
Yeah, 7,200 feet in Santa Fe.
Coaching channel guy.
Yeah.
And the first day, they all saw a 70-watt drop. As a percentage of their functional thresholds, I don't know what that is, but I can imagine it's substantial.
That is scary.
Yeah,
a lot.
on day 1. But by day 3, that cut in half. Now they're at a 35 watt deficit.
So this is crazy because this is different than everything I've read.
I know. So this is just one example. So take that with a grain of salt. By day 14, 2 weeks in, no difference at all. You're falling well inside of that 14-day acclimatization period. So you're not going to be fully up to snuff. So I'm not trying to discourage you, but just scale your expectations accordingly. And then a random study, in this study is more in line with what we see most of the time, is it takes at least 10 days, more like 12, 13 days, 2 weeks before you're fully acclimatized and back to the sort of power you were expecting at sea level or at lower altitudes. Yeah. So just know, expect sluggishness over the course of those first few workouts, some lethargy. You're not going to feel great. And you might have to shift a little more towards rate of RPE-based training.
Yeah. The
numbers aren't going to be as helpful as they usually are. So you're going to have to look at those numbers and recognize they're a little lower, but I feel like I'm working just as hard. So give RPE the credit, the due credit.
That could be like, it could sap your confidence right before a race. You go up there and it just feels hard and you can't even finish a workout.
Yeah.
It's good advice, Chad.
But for, I don't know how long you're there. I know you're there 7 days prior, and if you're going to stick around afterwards, but you could get in a bit of an altitude camp over the course of this and get in that full 14-hour days, drive a lot of that altitude training benefit, and it just so happens you're at pretty much the optimal altitude to do so.
Yeah.
So yay for you.
With past experience, if you know how you're going to deal with, elevation, that sort of area, that's when you can use the power data intelligently, because you need to kind of have like a scale to which you apply it.
Yeah.
But to drive this point home again, it does go like, once again, that can only just that should inform your perception. And when you're riding at their, to a certain degree, like it shouldn't replace it. Because when you get in those situations, like you said, expecting sluggishness and lethargy, you can get into situations where, like, I've seen people at elevation, and they, even though they may say that they feel just fine when they start riding or anything else, but things can shift so rapidly. It can be really difficult. People deal with it differently. It's all individual.
And they do, actually. There's a term I came across, which is altitude memory. I'm not sure who used it, but the more you train at altitude, the more time you spend at altitude, even if you spend time away from it, your body returns to that acclimatized state a little more rapidly.
Interesting. Yeah. And I could see a lot of people and that would build your confidence as well. I see a lot of people shatter themselves before a race at elevation, just merely from a confidence perspective, because they've had a bad experience or they've never raced at elevation and they don't know, and then they end up getting into the spot where they're just kind of dreading it.
Well, if you bring yourself into an event and you're topped off, you're in your best physical condition, but you jump up 3,000 feet, 6,000 feet, and I mean, your confidence is in an all-time high, but your capabilities simply aren't going to be there.
That's why before a 40K TT, I'm a week at sea level 1 week before. I'm so like,
and you've got to
train for do some big numbers.
That's not helping you,
Yeah, so I just have to have bigger numbers.
Yeah.
Than you, Chad.
Just go down there and just crush yourself for a week, the entire week.
That's funny.
Every day.
Let's go into the question from Kip. He says, "Hey guys, I've been really enjoying the podcast. I'm a newer cyclist and I joined TrainerRoad this past December, and I started at an FTP of 167. Now 4-ish months later, I just did the FTP test. That is at the halfway point of the mid-volume sustained power build plan, where I tested at an FTP of 245. Wow. Holy cow, man.
Good job.
TrainerRoad has been excellent at helping me get stronger. My question pertains to strategies to break bad habits. For context, in my youth, I was a swimmer for many years. I find that whenever I start hard efforts, 110% of FTP, something like that, I tend to hold my breath. Naturally, this causes my heart rate to spike and increases the difficulty before I remember that I can breathe at any time on a bike. Any strategies or suggestions for breaking this bad habit?"
Yeah, so Kip, what you're describing is akin to a Valsalva maneuver, which in weightlifting actually has a place, does not have a place in endurance training. Absolutely does not. So my first bit of advice to you is if you don't have the on-screen instructions turned on, turn them on, because I will beat you over the head with breathing suggestions. I mean, it's such a crucial component, and there are so many ways to use it, whether you're distracting yourself from the discomfort of the effort, actually clearing out the waste that if you don't exhale effectively, it doesn't get cleared out quite as well. But in any case, it's a really common theme over the course of those workout instructions.
Yeah.
And then repetition. You got to build habits. Don't do it. When I taught the classes and I had 7 riders around me, I would see this very thing. Even if it was in the midst of an interval where we'd have like a one of those little 5-6 second spikes, I'd see people hold their breath. Even though they're going into it gasping already, they'd hold their breath for that little push. Yeah. So I think it's somewhat of a natural response, but it's one that does not lend itself to what we're trying to accomplish here. So absolutely learn to breathe through it. And again, repetition is what's going to habitualize that and make it come as more naturally than it does right now.
Yeah.
And then just learn to embrace the pain and discomfort of these hard efforts. Know that they're gonna hurt, and one of the reactions to pain is to hold your breath, do this very thing. So I understand why it happens. Just accept that it's gonna hurt, but holding my breath through it isn't gonna make it any easier to tolerate.
Yeah.
When you saw people hold their breath, did they know they were doing it?
No. In all cases, they weren't intentionally doing it.
Right.
I'd remind them, say, drop your shoulders, breathe, and same thing with training people. They could be 10, 12 repetitions. You can't hold your breath for 10, 12 repetitions, at least not if you want to work effectively. So it's just kind of a natural response.
I wonder how many listeners who do workouts are doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Are holding their breath and don't realize it.
For sure.
And shortchanging your
That's
workout.
why those comments are there.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes I'll say, you're probably holding your breath right now. Breathe.
And I'm sure you remind yourself with those workout texts.
For
a lot
sure.
of times
Yeah,
too,
and I've
still.
cultivated the habits that I don't have to think about it anymore. It's not to say it doesn't happen. Maybe sometimes
happens
I'm
sometimes.
unaware of it and I'm holding my breath.
We should have Chad come into our office. I do my 2-hour trainer session. Just sit there, make sure I breathe.
Just stare at you.
Just stare at me.
Be
Breathe, Nate.
your breathing coach.
Just be my on-screen instructions, but actually be there.
Sounds like an effective use of my time.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever gone and gotten a massage, like a sports therapy
that's
massage,
a good example.
when you sit there and you go and you hold your breath, and the hopefully good therapist says no, breathe and relax, and you learn to breathe through the pain like that. I believe that there's a lot of help with that.
It's like when a dentist gives you a shot. It says big breath.
Yeah.
You breathe out, and they give you the shot. Everything's just a little better.
My daughter got her ears pierced. They said, breathe, smell in the cake, blow out the candles.
There we go.
That's
Remember
some
that
new workout text right there. Expect to see that soon.
The other thing I want to say with this is cyclocross riders, mountain bike riders, and road racers and triathletes. All of you do this. Mountain bike riders, when you come across technical terrain, you hold your breath.
And your body stiffens up
Same thing with cyclocross racers. You go up to barriers and you're just clenched and you're terrified and you don't know what to do.
We do, but you watch the top level riders. They don't.
In fact, there's a pro enduro rider who he's since retired, legendary downhill racer. His name is Fabian Burrell, and that's Fabien. Burrell is Barel. Go on YouTube and look at videos of him. You will hear him breathing so loudly at all times when he was descending. And you'll hear it over his free hub. You'll hear it over his tires. The guy sounds like he's got a megaphone attached to him. But he forced himself to breathe and forces himself to do that. And you'll see that with a lot of the top enduro and downhill racers. They force themselves to just expel that air when they're breathing. And they don't really, you're going to breathe in. Don't worry about that. But they force themselves to push it out. And I feel like it's so helpful to do. Road racers, when you're riding crits, how many times do you hold your breath coming into that sketchy section? Or when you're in the group, do you find yourself holding your breath more? Triathletes coming into transition, or when you deal with gusts of wind, and then you hold your breath and tighten up even more. That's the last thing you want to do with a gust of wind. So it's something that goes into intervals and everything beyond that too. You can make yourself a much more effective I guess a mechanism on your bike.
Trainer's a great place to practice establishing these habits too.
Yeah.
I mean, trainer's not going to throw anything technically challenging at you. We know this, but if you can learn to work through hard efforts, short, spiky, tough efforts, and breathe thoroughly through them, it's going to carry to things you do outdoors.
Yeah, it absolutely will. We're going to close it out with a fun one, a final one here from Lewis. He says, what apps do you guys use for cycling other than the norms? He says maybe other riders also have some great suggestions. So we went through and looked at we kind of made some lists for different ones that we use. Nate, do you want to start? And then we'll work to Chad. And then
I think the norm is everyone probably uses Strava.
Yeah, all right. Everyone, yeah.
Of course.
Really, I'm trying to think of all the apps besides TrainerRoad. Yeah. Best Bike Split. That's the only one. Is I usually throw in courses that we do for TTs and just try to figure out a pacing plan or a longer
road race.
Yeah, not usually road races, but maybe like a Lost and Found or something like that.
When I get serious and want to do a solo break for the whole entire road race, I use Best Bike Split.
Okay, I'll have to look.
That has only happened once. So, okay. That's what about you, Chad? What apps do you use?
It
Or to use?
depends what I'm doing. I've used View Ranger and All Trails a couple times.
Oh, View Ranger's sweet.
What's
View
View
Ranger's a gooder for we use it largely for trail runs,
Yep.
but certainly for mountain bike
What is it?
rides.
It's like basically like you can hold your phone up and it's almost like AR or augmented reality. And then what you can do is you can see the peaks, and the peaks are labeled where you're at. And you can also do it non-AR,
cool.
and you
It's
can
pretty
see
smart.
it.
Obviously, you have to have connection. So
Yes.
that's the weak link there.
Oh, so
Why it
you can
doesn't
say,
use
like,
as often as I'd like.
That peak is Mount Rose, and that peak is
Yes.
Peavine, and
Yep.
stuff like that.
You can see it from above as well in relation to your point, but the AR thing is really handy to have. It's super. I love that idea.
I dig it. Yeah. And then
View
all
Ranger.
trails just to figure out where to ride or run in
Yep.
our cases. And then map my ride and just kind of I use that more as a what am I getting myself into sort of measure, because I have these routes in my head and then I think, wow, that seems kind of long. And I did this a couple weeks ago and I ended up committing myself to a 100-mile ride and really wish I'd mapped that because that was a long day.
I use it, as everybody knows, I'm kind of a photo nerd, as you can see from my Instagram and other things like that. But photography, I use Lightroom on my phone all the time. It's super easy to edit, and it has a good camera in there. If I'm riding with other people and I need to find them, and let's say you need to meet up or
Find my
anything else like
friends.
that, Find My Friends is super helpful. Snapchat is very creepy with this, but you can also use Snapchat, and if people have approved their location, you can see where all of your friends are at all times. So if you use Snapchat and you've approved that and you don't want that, you should probably check that.
You youngsters and
yes.
your social media.
Yeah, for planning routes, like Chad said, Map My Ride's really good on the on computer. A Ride with GPS is okay. Strava's good for route mapping. Another one, though, if you're on your phone and you need to do it, this one's from DC Rainmaker. A good tip is called Easy Route. And it's actually really, on your phone, you can just create a route really easily. And it's really intuitive. The tricky thing with that is like touching and panning and not setting a point, you'd think, but they've figured out a way to do it and it just works. It's really helpful. And you can even, from that Easy Route thing, you can actually push it from your phone, I believe, over to your Wahoo Element or your Garmin from your phone, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool.
For trails, I use, so if it's a backcountry expedition, Gaia GPS, it's expensive. I think that it's like $90 and it's an iPhone app, but it comes with incredible maps and it's better than almost every GPS, handheld GPS you have. You just have to make sure you have enough battery on your phone.
And maps that reside on your phone. Then.
Yes, and you can download them beforehand, and you can get like 7 different types of USGS official maps. You can get a bunch of stuff. It's really helpful. But then the last one that I use for mountain biking and trails, TrailForks, is absolutely the best one to use. That one will show your position in relation to the trails, but then the cool thing is, like when I was in BC, up in Whistler, and I wanted to find some trails to ride, I'd look around, I'd tap on the trail. Every trail has a ton of reviews. Users can upload GoPro videos so you can see exactly what the trail looks like. It's regularly updated with status changes, and people will say, like, even one trail, though, somebody said a tree's down about 0.7 miles into the trail. So, like, it's really helpful.
It's like Waze for trails.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's kind of crowdsourced.
With TrailForks, I have used that before. And can you download the maps ahead of time?
You can now, and you can even download the TrailForks maps now onto your Garmin too.
Because that's so important. I did a ride the other day, and you didn't have cell service, and I tried to look up in Google Maps, but you can download it too, but they don't have the trails.
Yeah.
So it just I couldn't tell where I was or which trail, which like where to go. But TrailForks would have saved me.
It's super helpful. And the cool thing is, too, I think that when you're onboarded, they say, we see you're from Nevada or wherever else. Do you want to download all the trails or all the maps in Nevada? And you can download state by state. You can download those.
Cool.
So it's super helpful.
Downloading that and as soon as this is over.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, yeah, those are the apps we use, in addition, of course, to TrainerRoad. And
Thank you, Jonathan.
Stay tuned for that, because we have some super cool updates that you guys are really going to enjoy. We've talked about them a lot, but stay tuned for it. So, thanks, everybody, for joining us on the podcast. If you're here on the live stream, stick with us. We'll answer a handful of those questions that you've sent in. And if you want to submit your training questions, cycling, triathlon related, you can do so at trainerroad.com/podcast. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
That's your playing coy there.
I know, right? Okay, let me get into...
Someone said that I got a TUE. That's why I won.
You got...
Yeah, someone said that on my
that's
Strava
funny.
ride.
That's funny. Let's see. Okay, Nate's on Facebook. I'll jump to YouTube.
Here's a good question. Do you guys see any value in running a power meter on a mountain bike?
Oh, yeah. Heck
Probably
yes.
if
Yeah,
so,
do you
how?
wanna
Power meter on any bike. Yeah. So I on my Canyon, I have been reluctant to put a power meter on it just because I want one bike untainted by data and metrics.
Yeah.
Thought that'd be kind
Have
of a
a
break from it
release.
all.
Yeah.
I still want the data eventually. So even if I'd leave the headpiece at home, or well, I'd still bring the headpiece, maybe stuff in my pocket, tape it over, whatever. I still want that data, and that's in line. This recommendation is in line with always acquire as much data as possible all the time. You don't have to stare at it. You don't ever have to use it, but to know that it's there and you could use it, at least from a coaching perspective, an analytics coach, it's absolutely recommended.
We were actually, so last night when we were riding with Jeff Kabush, we were talking to him, and Jeff said, I love having power data all the time. He has it on his, and he's like for cross-country XCO races, he still likes having it. He said he doesn't use it as frequently there when it's an hour and a half all out and it's like, punchy and you're trying to cover moves. Mm-hmm. But he said definitely on epic rides. For example, he just did the Whiskey off-road, that one, and he said that he absolutely settled into pace governed by his power meter, and he kind of had to tell himself, and because it was his first race at elevation in a long time, so he kind of had to tell himself, you can hold this power, you know you can at this elevation, even though your body is kind of telling you it hurts, stick with it, trust in the fact that you've done it before and you can do it.
I do think that data becomes more useful the longer the ride becomes.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
And as far as mountain biking, everyone says, well, the data is all over the place. The data is still meaningful, even if you're coasting and doing everything else like that. And you'll find yourself many times in a cross-country Olympic race, even a short one, you'll find yourself on your own. How should you pace things? And if you know what you can roughly sustain in an environment like that, which you would know if you've had a power meter, it can be super helpful even when it's like a 5-minute climb, a 3-minute climb, a 2-minute climb, because you know that I can't really push that hard. So, yeah, it's absolutely worth it and something to have, I think. So,
John asked the questions. I have a decidedly non-optimized TT question. An Omnium has a short 3.2-mile TT. I would like your opinion about which bike to use. A newer Venge, which cannot accept clip-on aero bars due to the handlebar shape, or an older, heavier bike which can. I asked because about a quarter of the course is a grade of 4%, and was unsure the aero benefit would be offset by the 4 extra pounds of weight.
that's a good question.
But John, the Venge does have aero bars.
Ooh, does it?
From Specialized. They are overpriced and expensive. They're like $300.
Isn't it just like a little round U-bar?
Yeah, they're pretty much, the whole thing is it just gets your hands in the right position.
Gives you something to hang on to with your forearms draped on the tops.
And the Venge has like these really like airfoil shaped handlebars, which is why you can't use regular handlebars.
Yeah.
So John,
Regular clip-ons. Or handlebars too, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess
regular clip-ons, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you could put regular handlebars around, but you
just
wouldn't
have
want
to get a different stem, and then that negates
No,
a
the
lot
stem
of
would work, I think, because it's around.
Yeah, and reroute your cables. And
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no.
where I wouldn't
No.
work right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would
heck
be
no.
nice.
So John, if you can afford it, I would do that. But then let's say there's none. He's not going to get those. What do you guys think? The Aero Road bike or a less Aero Road bike, but get you in the position?
I would say
and
an
be 4 pounds heavier.
Aero road bike simply because I wouldn't want to cart a whole extra bike for a 3.2 mile time trial. Where the gains, the margins are going to be so narrow. It just if you're at the pointy end of things, and the victory could come down to a second or two, that's when you start considering things like this.
Yeah.
That's a really good kind of rule of thumb to work on with that. I feel like you said that a portion of the course is that 4% grade, but then thereafter, depending on what that is, if you have like a really fast section, you might end up benefiting more on the TT bike.
Yeah,
but
get on your tops and lower your torso. You'll be damn near as fast.
Yeah. So because it's such a short TT, I think you could be in a more compromised position on the road bike that you could never hold for 40K, but you could hold for 3.2 miles.
Yep.
And especially where some of that is that climb. So just try to you can practice it. I think we've seen too, the most aero is when you're kind of like grabbing the tops of the brake levers and you have the hoods, and you have your forearms parallel to the ground.
Yeah.
Yep.
You see, that's what the breakaways and the Tour de France.
It's what works.
Yeah.
We know this. Pete rolled by me on the time trial, and at that moment I was in my drops. And he's like, level forearms. Like, I can't. My triceps are on fire.
I know. See, right? And I think going back to that, my triceps were on fire too, and I think that is because I have a weak back and core. Because I would hold it up with my back and core for a little bit, and I could do it for like 10 or 15 seconds, and I'd be like, "Ooh, that's really hard."
I don't suffer from that affliction, and the entire time it was doing the same thing because it's just an unfamiliar position. Yeah. So it didn't matter where I centered my weight; I wasn't used to holding that position for sustained periods of time. Yeah. So I think we practice it; it'll become a non-issue.
Yeah.
This one's a bit of a heavy topic, but how common do you think eating disorders are in the sport of running and cycling? I can't comment on running at all and cycling, and I'm not sure we gain much from this, but other than the fact that I do think that it's important to bring awareness to this sort of thing.
Usually common.
Yeah, a lot of pro cyclists.
Usually common. There are statistics on this, and every book I read on nutrition usually cites them at the beginning, so I should be able to recall them, but I can't. Just suffice it to say enormous. Yeah. Like 8 out of 10 of us suffer from some form of eating disorder over the course of our endurance sport careers.
Yeah, it's just something that that relationship with food, it can be tricky for us that are always chasing marginal gains and your relationship with your body and everything else like that.
I don't think there's a more weight conscious crowd than endurance athletes.
Yeah.
In terms of sports.
Models.
Dancers, models.
Sports.
Yeah. Dance, I guess, kind of transcends, a bit.
Gymnasts.
Yeah.
There's a lot, probably.
Yeah,
it's tricky. I mean, it's something that, the one thing I just want to say with this, in our family, growing up, and we've had a lot of experience, unfortunately, with this, and something that I just want to say is if you do even think that you might have something like that, definitely reach out to people, because it's something that is... It's absolutely a weight that you don't have to carry alone.
I promise you're far from alone. There are a lot of people who will understand your plight.
Yeah, Exactly right. So please do that.
It's called sports anorexia.
Yeah.
I dated someone in college, and she got some help, and it's all better now.
Yeah, now it's relative energy deficiency in sport is the term they're throwing at it now. Basically, we're not giving ourselves enough food relative to the amount of work we're asking our bodies to perform.
Wow.
I did that before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And my
we all have.
went down.
We all have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
New says, can you share one pro tip for a Merckx TT? What would you do on a normal road bike setup to possibly separate yourself from the others? I'm using a skin suit and resting arms on handlebars trying to get aero. It's 16K, pretty flat.
If you are going to, so 16K is a short race. If you can, drop as much stack out of the front end as possible. Maybe get a longer stem and put that on there, so then you can be a little lower and stretched out. That's one thing I would say. I
think I'd probably just move forward on the saddle. If it's a short time trial like that, I can accommodate, or I can sustain that uncomfortable position for that short duration, and it's just a faster position. It's more powerful.
I was going to say, but the folding in half is, you think that you're folded, but I bet you over the course of it, the first minute you're the most folded,
up,
and it just goes, slightly.
Yeah,
totally.
This is that's a testament to how we're spending a lot of time on our time trial bikes training so that we can avoid those things. Because we do a Merckx time trial and we go out there and we just expect to wing it and stay in that low position, and we think we're low, but we're so not.
Yeah.
Saw photos of it, and we're so not.
It'd be nice for all road racing though to be able to stay comfortably in that position.
For sure.
Even for 100 miles. I mean, that's probably not realistic, but think about the amount of energy you would save, right? Oh, it'd be huge.
So this is, I don't know if Andrew Boren is a doctor, but just the same, he says Neosporin includes neomycin.
That's it.
Polysporin has everything that neomycin has except neomycin. So I assume he says everything that Neosporin has except neomycin. He says approximately 30% of the population will respond with an allergic reaction to neomycin.
Really?
So it could cause greater inflammation and problems. I assume that's why.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, somebody says, how would I know when I'm overtraining even though I don't do long rides? So maybe you're the type of person that's doing shorter rides, harder rides, and you're wondering how you get to the point of overtraining.
You won't. First off, not actual overtraining syndrome. You just get a little overreached and get fatigued. Most likely, we've talked about this a couple times. You have to be a pretty high level athlete, and it's a very dedicated athlete to push yourself to the point of actual overtraining syndrome. And then the road back is a very long one. Just this typical things: sleep disturbances rise probably to the top of the heap. Yeah. Differences in cravings, food cravings, irritability. Just lack of motivation in terms of training, obviously decreases in your training performance and certainly your racing performance as well.
Yeah.
What am I leaving out?
I mean, something that I guess just anecdotally, like an N=1 thing for me, I notice if I'm overreaching, anything else like that, I have a really hard time recovering between efforts. I notice that gets extended out.
That doesn't apply just to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your rate of recovery within a workout, post workout, between workouts.
It's extended a bit. It can be really tricky to kind of like
Suppressed or elevated heart rate, elevated waking heart rate, repressed or depressed heart rate during the workout itself, inability to elevate heart rate to usual heights.
and gigantic asterisk, like the size of like a billboard here. Heart rate's variable, subjective, and can throw you off if you rely too much on that data sometimes.
It's variable, not so much subjective, but yeah.
But it can be very wading through those waters can be a little tricky as far as like assessing like where you've crossed a line or anything else with that. But we always recommend to people to gradually build into things, like with our training plan, start with a low volume plan, step up, and then to the point where you feel like it's where you need to be. Because once you put yourself in a hole, it takes some makeup work to get out of that versus just working your way into things. So,
Glenn says, can you talk normalized power versus FTP? I consistently test indoors to 260 FTP, but last night I did a 1.5 hour ride with an NP of 291 with relative ease.
Whoa.
I calibrated my power meter. I know you guys have answers in a million variations, but he wants to know. So I did the math on this, Chad. And if he did 291 for 90 minutes, and you multiply that by 90%, that's 260.
Yeah.
So for order for him to test that, he has to hold what he held for an hour and a half for 8 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
So I think something's wrong here,
Something's
Glenn.
wonky.
Something's
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
I would suggest we just released a ramp test. It's in
Yeah.
beta still, but if you open your app and it's updated, there'll be a workout in there called ramp test. Try doing that one to see if you get a better number. If not that, I know you looked at your power meter, but like when I occasionally see stuff like that, and someone will say, on their test they held a power number for 8 minutes that they can they can hold. You can hold it for 90 minutes in another situation. How come you can only hold it for 8 minutes?
Yeah, it's like physiologically
Doesn't make sense.
impossible.
Right?
Yeah.
Something else is going on.
Yeah.
So if your RPE really was pegged in both, I would look at the power meter.
Yeah.
Because there's something's wrong.
Or your level of fatigue between those two rides.
That's a huge level, right?
It's massive.
90 minutes
That's
versus
a lot.
8 minutes.
Massive.
Yeah, big difference. Do you guys mind if we finish with two like kind of more fun ones? Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like fun questions.
This one I guess isn't very fun, but I guess it's more of just like a personal one. What gear do you all use to transport your bikes when traveling via car or flight? I guess you want to start with car.
Car, yeah. I have a roof rack, just a Thule Aero bars, so they're a little sleeker looking, and then Kuat carriers.
Those things are quiet, the Thule Aero bars, right?
They are.
Relatively.
That whole setup is, I think even the trays for the Kuats, the carriers
The
themselves.
Trio, I think it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, they're quite nice.
Nice.
So not a lot of roof noise with that. I have a quiet car too, so it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I have a truck, and I use the Thule pad in the back,
Tailgate pad.
and I actually put over road bikes on that. The only bike that doesn't fit is our TT bike because it's so steep.
Yeah.
And on that one, then I have it has a rail system, and I take off the
Front wheel.
and put it on there. But all the other bikes have disc brakes, and I don't have an adapter, and it's actually so much easier just to throw it on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm gonna get a sedan later, and I'm thinking about using a sea sucker.
Sea suckers on there?
Yeah, I don't know. Are those? I
I feel like it's not a great permanent solution, but I could be wrong. And I know people will like flame us for that, but I feel like getting like Chad said, the best crossbars that I've found are the Thule Aero bars because they're really quiet. And then
Thule
the best
towers.
The best roof racks I've found are the Kuat ones. I asked the Kuat guys at Sea Otter, I said, when are you going to release a roof rack that will clamp down on my tire instead of requiring me to take my wheel off, And they said it's something they're always testing, but they don't know when they're going to release it.
For wheel on, I like the carriers, and I don't have a hitch in my car, but a lot of cars have hitch for a hitch mount carrier, and the Thule, the Envy,
The Kuat Envy.
Kuat. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
not Thule, the Kuat Envy. Man, that thing
Amazing.
is bomb proof. It's
Is
such
it?
a good rack.
Such a good rack. That's a hitch rack. So
Okay. And what for the rail system? You like the Kuat one too?
the
the
Trios.
Kuat carriers, but
Yeah.
I don't think does Kuat even make towers and
They don't
and
make
bars?
towers, but you can get Thule ones that'll be set up.
Wait, what's a
specifically
tower?
For your car. So
The four projections that
Okay.
connect the bars.
So I
Yeah.
can get the 4 projections, and then I would just need the system, and it's like that T-lock system.
yeah, so
Is that the?
they usually have roof rails, right? And those are the things that run parallel to the direction of the car when it's going down the road. Then you have crossbars. Those crossbars usually have pedestals of some sort. And those can either clamp onto the outside of your car, like the door, basically, or you can have built into the car, it'll have a system where you can actually put the things threaded in right there. Then
Depends on your roof rack system for your car.
Yep, exactly. And then you'll have crossbars, and then attached to those crossbars are your bike racks.
Or whatever carriers, skis,
Exactly.
paddle boards, whatever,
So
kayaks.
For your crossbars, you always it's worth it to go with an aerodynamic one because otherwise they make a ton of noise.
They really do.
And then those Kuat trios, those are the bike racks he has on top, and they're so quiet and sleek, and they're cool. I like.
Do you leave them on all the time, or do you take them off in between?
100% of the time. I mean, the towers and the bars are always on. It's just a question of which carriers, depending on what time of season it is. I leave 2 bike carriers on all the time. It just so happens I can put all the other carriers, the ski carriers, the paddleboard carriers, inside of those 2 bike carriers. So those stay. And I can also fit 2 more bikes on. I mean, it's pretty.
You fit 4 bikes on your.
Yeah,
wow.
pretty nice, huh?
It's pretty awesome. I think the sedan you're thinking of too. It looks really cool with bike racks on the top. But I use I have for my truck. I have a Kuat, not the Transfer. I have the Sherpa. I've had the Transfer. It's their lower end one in terms of cost, and it's really really good. And I have the Sherpa, and it's a really clean, aesthetically beautiful looking rack, and it's very solid. It's not. I'd say it's like 90% as solid as the Envy. The Envy from Kuat is like bulletproof. It's zombie apocalypse stuff.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Kuat racks.
Oh, they make such good stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
And then for planes, all of us use bike bags. Those are BIKND. We have the Jetpack, which I think I saw they're coming out with a new Jetpack, one for like bigger bikes perhaps. And then the Helium is the one that you have as well. That one can carry multiple wheel sets, but it doesn't fit really big bikes, it seems like.
It rolls a little nicer.
Ooh,
Yeah, so the
nice.
Helium has 4 wheels, and the Jetpack has 2 wheels, which is so annoying. Give me 4 wheels.
Please,
And
4
then
wheels.
the handle cuts into your hand so bad.
You don't.
So bad.
You underestimate how much weight it gets when you have to support half of that thing. Even though it's on, you're dragging it on those 2 wheels. It gets heavy fast.
It's it's the handle is like sharp.
It's a
and
bad
it digs into
material.
your
It's
hand.
not a good design.
Yeah, we need to put a PVC pipe. We just haven't done it yet.
Yes,
Those
some
carriers are
plastic
amazing,
in it.
or those
The bike bags are incredible.
awesome.
We've used the
So
I
nice.
think we've shipped it probably
a lot.
Oh, a lot. In between all 3 of us and our separate travels that
25,
we've done,
30 times.
Yeah, yeah.
And we haven't had a problem.
Nope, not
No
a single
broken
one.
parts.
So they're really good. Then let's see, the last one that I wanted to do. Actually, I think the comment got deleted. Yeah, it's just not there. Oh, sad
Wah, wah,
day.
wah.
All right. Well, with that, everybody, thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you all next week at the normal time. It'll be Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific. If you want to submit a podcast question, once again, trainerroad.com/podcast. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.